Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd ask that committee members please take your seat, sign in, and turn your phone to silent or vibrate. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this morning? Seeing none, there is a public participating meeting this morning. The purpose and order of the public meeting, I would like to call to order the public portion of today's meeting being held in accordance with the Municipal Act and regional policy. The purpose of this meeting is to receive comments and answer questions from the public regarding the proposed stop-up closed portion of the Regional Road 100 St. Paul Avenue in the city of Niagara Falls, which is report CST 54-2018. In accordance with the Niagara Region's public notice policy, regional policy C3P09, the public notice of the meeting was advertised on the region's website on August 16, 2018, in accordance with notice provisions at least 10 days prior to this meeting. There are no registered speakers as of in advance of today's meeting. However, if there are any persons present who wish to make representation on the matter, they will be given an opportunity to do so. Members of the public and applicants are welcome to provide their input and concerns to members of Corporate Services Committee and to regional staff, either orally today or in writing to the regional clerk. Are there any individuals present who wish to speak to this report? Are there any individuals present who would like to speak to this report? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Volpatti, moving, and a seconder for report CSD 54-2018. Councillor Gale, that's fine. Thank you. Any questions or comments from committee members regarding this report? You can see the motion on the screen. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you. At this point, the statutory public meeting for the proposed stop-up and close portion of Regional Road 100 is now adjourned. We'll continue with the balance of our regular committee meeting. At this point, I'd like to invite Maciej Jurczyk, Director, Internal Controls and Organizational Performance, to the podium for a presentation respecting the 2015 to 2018 Council Strategic Priority Projects. Committee may recall at previous council meeting, we actually did receive formally the document, but time did not allow for a presentation. It is, I believe, of utmost importance that we receive this presentation not only for ourselves, but for the public as well. So with that said, Maciej and CAO, welcome.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. I wanted to introduce the report of the Strategic Plan of Council. And as if you recall, in 2015-2018, Niagara Region Strategic Plan was created at the direction of this current council for its term, and was an inspiring, forward-looking transition of Niagara as a community. From this strategic plan, Regional Council established 30 quite aggressive and ambitious projects that we worked collaboratively as staff to bring it across the finish line. The results are summarized in the document entitled Council Strategic Priority Projects Are Term in Review. These projects were above and beyond the regular day-to-day operations that we deliver. So these are in addition, and I want to make reference to all the staff that went in to produce these projects and bring them across the finish line. These are individuals who have their day-to-day responsibilities, roles and responsibilities, but then took on one of these projects, one of these 30 projects. So it's staff who are going above and beyond their normal work job description. And then they would have a sponsor, and the sponsor would be a member from the corporate leadership team. And then they would form teams, and these are multidisciplined teams that worked on all of these 30 projects. And what is the result? The result shows that we've had many significant community events, consultation, ensuring that these objectives and outcomes were aligned with the voice of residents. And so what you see is a review report which showcases all the benefits and the resulting progress that we've now, many of these projects were goals and objectives, And then what we've done now is operationalize them into our day-to-day activities. So here's a term in review. And if you'll note, when we reformatted council's reports, and we brought to you at about 2 years ago, each report makes a reference to one of the pillars of the strategic plan. So whether it's moving people and goods, fostering innovation, investment, and entrepreneurship, building a labor-ready workforce, positioning Niagara globally, doing business differently, or advancing organizational excellence, every report that comes to council makes reference to one of these pillars in order to align our day-to-day business with your strategic plan. So at that, I'll turn it over to the director.
Good morning, Chair Barrick and members of Corporate Services Committee. My name is Mache. I'm the Director of Internal Control and Organizational Performance. Thanks for the intro, Carmen. In fact, we've actually submitted this report back to you on July 26th at your council night, but unfortunately we ran out of time on that occasion. So thanks, Chair Barrick, for the opportunity to come back and give you a brief presentation on some of the highlights in this report. So maybe I'll take a step back, excuse me, and give you some background and some history on why we've produced this report for your consumption today. So approximately 3.5 years ago, Council had approved a strategic plan which was to foster economic prosperity in Niagara. This plan included 6 pillars that Carmen just mentioned a moment ago. 4 of them were focused on fostering the prosperity of the region, and 2 of them were focused on striving to be a better organization. And these 6 pillars tie back to the corporate performance dashboard, which gives you, council, and your constituents, the residents of Niagara, it gives you a snapshot of how are we as a region performing against this strategic plan. So the next thing that council had approved back then was also a strategic implementation plan. So this is essentially a work plan for the staff to implement. And again, each one of these 30 priority projects tie back to one of the 6 strategic pillars that you see up there in front of you. And as Carmen had said, the staff were assigned to be owners of or project managers for these projects with project sponsors. And in fact, with hindsight, I would argue that having a project-based strategic plan was actually quite wise, as opposed to a thematic or theme-based strategic plan. And the reason I say that is because projects have a defined start and end date. They are specific, they are outcome-based. Progress can be measured, and it allows for transparent reporting to the council and to the Niagara residents. And so from that perspective, I would argue that a project-based strategic plan was actually a wise course of action. So in the past, our team in ICOP, we've been reporting to council on a regular basis. You may recognize that this is the format that we've provided to you from a reporting perspective in the past. In the past, we've reported biannually on each project, including the timelines, the budgets, the risks, and the overall project health for each one of council's 30 strategic priority projects. And so this was the summary of what we provided to you before. Green means on track, yellow means at risk, red means behind. This was the summary that we've provided to you in the past. And this was the detail that we provided to you, which included the completion rate, the risks, the mitigations, the budget versus actual spend, and so forth on all of those 30 priority projects. So this time around, we took a bit of a different approach, and we provided this report for you and the residents of Niagara for your consumption. So this report is really a term in review. So what we wanted to do was provide you a final update as we are nearing the end of the council term. And the vast majority of these 30 projects have been either completed and have moved to some operational phase as well. And so some of the most significant projects like the GO train have they accomplished the objectives that were set out for them, and now they're actually operationalized as an example, in the Public Works division. So this report really we wanted to give you a final update on these 30 projects. So this time around, the report format's a little bit different. For example, on moving people and goods, that was a strategic pillar. The provincial commitment to go expansion. I wanted to give you some highlights of what we've provided for you in this report. So for every one of the 30 priority projects, we're giving you what was the original project objective. On the right side, you also see what the major milestones were over the last 4 years. What were the results of that project, the impacts, the outcomes, and if there were any next steps, we've provided that information for you as well. And so this one, as an example, the GO expansion, this was the original objective of that project. Just using that as an example. So under project milestones, this section of the report speaks to what were the major events or the major transactions, achievements, etc., that occurred during the life of that project. So using this Bend the Curve project, using that as an example, you see that we've provided some information for your consumption here from the start to present day. What were those major milestones that occurred on that particular project? And again, continuing on with the style of the report, the measurable section, the measurable results section, that really speaks to the actual financial or operational results that were achieved from that project. So using this one as an example, revenue generation and line-by-line budget review, those were the actual results in dollars saved for that particular project. And finally, the impacts and outcomes section of the report, that really, we wanted to provide some context to the reader of the report about what was the impact of that strategic project on the region or on the affected community. And again, this gives you some verbiage, some context for that. And there is one more section, the recommendations and next steps. We wanted to provide you as council and our residents with information about what's going to happen next in the state of that project. So just because we're at the end of the council term doesn't mean that the project dies. A lot of them have actually moved into an operational phase. And so what we wanted to provide you here was some information on what actually is going to happen next. And that's an example from the customer service project. So now we wanted to throw out a shout out to our performance dashboard as well. So council at the time, when they created and approved this strategic plan, my understanding is that council had communicated a strong desire to measure the performance of the strategic plan and how successfully we as staff and as council are fostering economic prosperity in the region. So we created this corporate performance dashboard, which you might have seen in the past. We've provided this to council on a quarterly basis in the past. And again, our objective was to provide you and the regional residents with information which shows either a progress against these metrics or lack of progress. And this dashboard report really ties back to the 30 strategic projects and to your strategic plan. They're all really linked together. I would highly recommend that the next council continue to measure the performance of the region with both internal and external KPIs and publish those metrics for council and Niagara residents to consume. This is actually a leading trend among other comparable municipalities, and it supports the concept of open and transparent government. In fact, next week we'll provide council with an update on like a project update on our Shape Niagara initiative, which is a public consultation that we're performing over this past summer. And by next summer and into winter, we in ICOP hope to work with the new council as they build their new strategic plan with new strategic projects. And our hope is that we would recommend to have a performance dashboard and a project-based strategic plan. That's our recommendation, of course, for the new council. In closing, I would hope that our team has provided value to you as a councillor and to your respective constituents with this style of reporting, and we hope to continue to work on this type of material in the new council term. And the very last thing is I'd just like to do a shout out to all of the staff. As Carmen mentioned, the 30 project managers, they actually did this on the side of their desks. We're talking about day-to-day nurses and engineers and accountants who have their normal work, and then they were asked to do these 30 priority projects, as well as the project sponsors were involved in this as well. So I feel that we owe them a degree of gratitude for their work on this. And also, as a shameless plug to my team, they've actually put in a lot of work on this as well. So we got Nathan Childs and Sandy Dupuis, Catherine O'Leary, who retired a few months ago, and they worked on this report under Kristen DeLong and Dan Pilon's leadership. So I just wanted to thank them for that as well. Thank you, and I'd be happy to take any questions you have. Thanks, Chair Barrick.
Great, thank you, Director Yurchik. Appreciate the amount of work put into the report itself, as well as the presentation today. I just have a quick question. I'm happy to go to the speakers list with respect to the distribution of the report, how and where it's being distributed. I mean, it's great news. It's 40 pages, a lot there. We want to get the good word out.
Through you, Chair Barrick, this was on the council agenda back on July 26th, so it is now a public document. In addition to that, we've actually put it on the very front page of the regional website, so that any resident or any visitor to the Niagara region website will be able to see it, and it's right there on the front page. They'll be able to click on it and read it for themselves.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not sure if this is a question for you or not, but is there any way we can get the actual report on every local council agenda, or certainly to them for their discussion? We have a lot of regional correspondence that goes to local municipalities regularly. They are partners, and a lot of these projects impact them directly. So I don't know if that's maybe through the clerks that can be done, or what the process would be.
Happy to take that direction.
Okay, thank you so much. With that said, we do have some questions. Councillor Volpatti.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for your question, because I'm going to ask a shameless question now too. It's a great report, and I'm hoping to use it in my campaign. Is it available to all candidates? Can they get copies of it to use?
So this report is a public document. It's
Right.
available to all residents.
Right. So if a candidate came to the office and asked for 10 copies, that would be available to them?
Through you, Chair Barrick, I would recommend to print and download this yourself, respectfully.
Oh, okay. So that is the advice I need, and thank you for that. Sorry.
If I may, we have a policy on use of municipal resources during
Yes.
an election campaign. So as the director indicated, if someone would like copies, it's available, but the onus would be upon an existing councilor or a potential councilor or any resident that they would have to download it, print it themselves for distribution. But we will take the direction to send them to all the local municipalities.
Yes, and that would be hard copies that you're sending to councils?
That's the direction I understood.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you for that. It's a great report. Congratulations to you, Carmen and Mache, your team, and job well done.
Thank you.
I'm really intrigued by this project-based strategic planning. I just think it's very innovative. Can you tell me where you got the idea, how it came to fruition here at this council?
Through you, Chair Barrick, to Councillor Volpatti, I will not take credit for that good idea. In fact, I'm not going to say, I don't know whose a good idea it was. It was likely somebody in the council at the time, or the staff who had thought of that bright idea at the time.
Yeah, well, it's a very good idea.
It is a leading practice, though.
Right. Well, I'm very impressed rather than the thematic-based planning. Can you tell me, and I'm sure it's in the report, but how many of the 30 projects have been operationalized to date?
Through you, Chair Barrick, to Councillor Volpatti, respectfully, I don't know if I have that information right on my fingertips. I would say that the vast majority of the projects have been completed. Some of them had a definitive end point in time, such as influencing the provincial government for planning purposes. And we've done that. We've lobbied, we've advocated on behalf of Niagara region, and that is now complete. Other projects such as GO, that has now been operationalized in the Public Works Division.
Okay. So how, speaking of measurables, which is so important when you're talking about strategic planning, how do you measure your advocacy with government, for example? How do we know that's been successful or not successful?
Through you, Chair Barrick, to Councillor Volpatti, that's a tricky question. In fact, I would argue that the types of projects or the types of strategic projects that the new council ultimately decides upon should be measurable, because that type of example or scenario that you're providing is more of a soft skill. It's more of a
Yes.
qualitative, immeasurable or intangible type of influence that we can do, as opposed to other projects where we say revenue generation, we will save $1 million, and that is definitive. It's hard to say, Councillor Volpatti, but it is our preference to have measurable outcomes.
Yes, and I think it's everybody. If you can't measure it, then it's likely not very doable. Sorry.
And if I may, through you, Chair, to Councillor Volpatti, but when we talk about influencing provincial policy
Yes.
instruments, one of our measures is the number of permits, number of planning applications,
Okay.
number of pre-consultations. That is captured, it's reported through planning and economic development, and you'll see quite a significant progression of economic prosperity in Niagara, and that's our measures of influencing provincial policy.
So that's one KPI.
Yes.
Right. Okay, well, thank you very much again. I think it's innovative. I really appreciate the report. I'm glad I can download it and have it printed so I can use it. And congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Easton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is a great report. Thank you very much, Mr. CAO. I read this, I think I saw the hard copy a couple of weeks ago, and it is really very impressive, and certainly presentation, I think, makes a huge difference, the way information comes forward. And so while this type of project approach is not new, I think the innovative way that you presented it really makes a huge difference. I'm interested to know about, my question is going to be around community symptoms, but the first question that I have is around the principles behind Bend the Curve. Can you speak about that?
One moment here.
Sorry, I can't tell you what page it's on.
Yeah, 13. So through you, Chair Barrick, to Councillor Easton, you know, respectfully, Councillor Easton, I'm not a subject matter expert in that particular project. If you like, what I could do is I can connect you with the project sponsor or maybe the project manager for Bend the Curve. They'll be able to maybe shed more light on the actual guiding principles of that particular project. Our role in our team was really to be the messenger of the, you know, to provide the information back from the project managers. So I'd be respectfully, I don't have that information, and I'd like to connect you with the project manager for Bend the Curve specifically, if that's okay.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I think the CAO is often knowledgeable about these theories, and so I'd like to see what he has to say.
Yeah, sure. Commissioner Jugley and her team have to be very applauded on their efforts on Bend the Curve. And this is a program that we've presented to the previous provincial government and now the new provincial government of a new way of doing business, on bending the curve and getting people into jobs, real active jobs. And so we're quite proud of it. I know the ministry has been down looking at this program in order to emulate across the province. And so it's something we advocate all the time, of doing business differently and organizational excellence here in Niagara that can be emulated across the province.
All right, so you don't have you don't really have any specific information on that theoretical construct,
We,
but I can get it from her.
respectfully, they are in existence through reporting, through Public Health and Community Services Committee, and we can do our utmost to get you those reports.
Okay.
So it's quite outlined on our measures and our outcomes of this program.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much for that. Mr. Chairman, the question then that I want to ask is around the community symptoms section, which actually is where the Bend the Curve project was applied. And so the numbers that are here, the first one, if I can read it, is caseload and households served. So was the goal here to try and decrease the numbers, or what were they trying to change here? Do we know that, or is that too much detail for this presentation? If it is, that's fine, I understand.
No, through you, Chair, to Councillor Easton, it's a great question. So from a lay person's perspective, speaking to the specialist, the goal is to reduce the caseload, but then to move that demographic into paying jobs, real
Okay.
paying jobs.
All right.
That's the overall objective of that program.
Okay, it's very, very hard to read this, so can you tell us what the outcome was? What happened? What was the bottom line with this exercise? Can you tell? I can't really read this.
The bottom line of what the measures showed us through that program, Bend the Curve, is that our caseload management was reduced, and we transitioned a significant of that demographic into real paying jobs.
Okay.
And so we're matching, reduce the caseload management, and then matching those individuals to employers.
Okay, so that's certainly, this doesn't, I guess, put the pepper behind what really happened. This is really pretty significant.
It sure is.
If that's the case, this is pretty significant. And I think there probably are other things in this report as well. As you suggested, we really should not lose the momentum on them. And so at some point in time, we really need to know more about what happened, because as you know, I believe that there's always huge benefits when you start paying attention to the determinants of health. And if this is the way, if this is the beginning and this appears to be the way forward, then I certainly, would like to be able to know that we are definitely on the right track with this one. So we'll wait, and I'll speak to the commissioner about that. Mr. Chairman, the issue of silos, and so what can you tell us, either of you, about the whole business of measuring the multidisciplinary impact? Because I worry about, I mean, it's always great to say that people did this extra work on the end of their desk, but you don't want to operate, treat your employees, like that on an ongoing basis. And this is pretty important work now. So there's a multidisciplinary element to this, I think. That's my interpretation. So what can you tell us about that? Because not everybody operates well in a multidisciplinary environment. They don't see the necessity of communicating with other people. So did something change with this? Because I think there's a lot of savings there. It's soft, but it's there. What can you tell us about that, through you, Mr. Chairman?
Through Chair to Councillor Easton, I'm going to refer to a project that, if I could say, is not really sexy, right? And that is the EFMS project. So if you take a look at this project is a result of our Burgoyne Bridge Value for Money audit and a result of our forensic audit. But I would say to committee, it was a game changer for this organization, because led by finance, Helen and her team, Mel Steele, I got to give a lot of kudos to, these individuals implemented an organizational-wide financial system for outstanding accountability. So now, whether it's a visa expense or a multi-million-dollar project, we track everything across all departments, divisions, and right into the frontline workers. It's all tied in. We collect all that. We now report it quarterly to council. Real, solid, measurable financial information. And now we can make very good projections on our trending, what our surplus or deficits, where they are in the organization, and how do we position ourselves. So it's fluid. It's real-time information that's fluid. And that is an example of a project that was a game changer. It met a need, so there's an identified need. It was implemented over 2 years. It's a game changer for Niagara, and it's multidisciplined in the fact that it's now right across the organization.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I believe that when you achieve financial innovation and sustainability, that all other elements of the organization fall in place. It's when you get that innovation moving in other departments first, and then you don't have your the financial piece nailed down, that it's problematic. So thank you very much for that example. Mr. Chairman, I have one more question, if you'll permit me. This has to do with the airport study. So I'm just going to, I'm not going to ask you a question about the study. I'm going to ask you a question about the theory behind dealing with subjects where there isn't an equitable outcome for everybody. So I'm just going to use that as an example. So what can you tell me about this kind of a model when you start looking at things like the airport study, where clearly there is I guess that if everything is working at the level that it ought to, having an airport is really important to the region. I think everybody gets that. But when you look at the list of priorities, it may not be the one that we would all choose. So how do you deal with those subjects where so that you don't allow too much politics to get into it? Because one thing that I noticed, Mr. Chairman, is that in every case here, you're not coming to seek the advice of counsel, and therefore you're making decisions that are depoliticized, which I think is very good. So when you're dealing with something like that, what can we expect in terms of the credibility of that kind of analysis? It could be anything. I just picked that because it was one we were dealing with.
If I may, some of that question, Councillor, is related to specific council direction. And I acknowledge the issue because there's two airports. There's the Central Airport and the District Airport.
Right.
And in fairness to staff, and of course the CEO can respond however he wishes, they're following council direction.
Right.
So in terms of the politics, that's us, and then they're following the direction. But CEO, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Your comments are very accurate. It was a strategic direction of council to study the airport.
Right.
And so that's what we did. And so that project is now complete. There was a good dedicated team that studied the airport. What is it required in order to bring it to the next stage of economic value? So your comments, through the chair to Councillor Easton, your comments are spot on. An airport is, municipalities that run airports, it takes a while, it loses money to get it to a point that it's where you have efficient operations and now it's generating some revenue. The example is the Hamilton Airport. It was a money loser quite a bit on the tax levy, being subsidized by tax levy, and now it's a profitable airport. We see that model working very well with the airport in Niagara. And then I'll talk about the Central Airport also. But when you look at the Niagara District Airport, right now it has tremendous value in that it is an economic tool. So we can bring in international companies utilizing that airport. The other example is for the 2021 Canada Summer Games. We're trying to get into the tender that athletes and their families land there rather than at the Hamilton Airport. We're trying to position it because just think of all the visitors across Canada landing in Niagara on the lake and then going to the events. And it showcases Niagara region. So there's tremendous value right now as an economic tool, but it does require subsidy of the levy. But then if you leverage that economic tool and you put in, we're talking about an extended runway, some customs at the airport, and now it becomes a venture where it's more profitable.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, I wasn't intending to, and thank you very much for that, Mr. CEO. The point really that I wanted to reinforce, I guess, is that nothing begins without council direction, which is exactly what the CEO has reinforced, and that there are decisions, the flexibility of this, the nimbleness of this process is that as circumstances change, it is possible to introduce new information and to make alternative decisions, if you will, that fit with that primary direction. So again, it is a strength, I think, of this of the process. Mr. Chairman, my final comment is that I recently sat as part of a group that looked at an incentive program for staff, which used this methodology exclusively to determine whether or not people were operating well beyond the average in terms of performance. And it may be something that that you may want to look at here, because this really requires, to be successful with this kind of process, requires some pretty sophisticated skills. And I understand that better now, having been part of that presentation. So I want to thank you again for this. I think this is what people really need to know about what is happening here. And I see this as a tremendous baseline for the future. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Timms.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And through you to the staff, I want to join the councillors in recognizing and congratulating you on the presentation of the summary of the term and the approach that has been taken in laying out the project by project, including the getting down to the recommendations and next steps. And particularly, I like the format that in this report, both published and online, that lays out the project leads among staff in each one of these areas. I think that's significant. It identifies the contribution of all the staff around the region implementing the direction of this council. And I do recall at the beginning of this where we talked about the approach. And for all the anger and frustration we have with Chair Caslin, I remember that it was his dashboard and his focus on metrics, measure results, specific projects, that is an answer to the question of where the idea came from. Seems to me that there is some credit due to the, I guess it was the General Motors project manager style that Chair Caslin brought to the table that I think had a lot to do and answers a bit of the question Councillor Volpatti had. So sometimes, you know, regardless of everything in perspective, you have to give credit where credit is due. And I think there is some credit due to the chairman on that score. There's a couple other things, major progress items have been mentioned, but I just wanted to ask or give some credit to and thank you and appreciation to council for a couple of the specific projects that are operationalized. And the one is the Port Robinson Ferry project under the Moving People and Goods. It's a small piece, but it makes a lot of difference to a lot of people, and it really helped further the tourism aspect of the Greater Niagara Circle route and brought sort of a conclusion to the episode of the Seaway, taking out a major regional road and reducing the, killing the growth opportunity around Port Robinson. The Thorold has recently, I guess, successfully revitalized that Port Robinson area. But so number one, that's a page that's given a full page, Port Robinson. The other one was the investment in, under the section of investment, innovation, and entrepreneurship, the tourism strategy. And thanks again to this council that we were able to revitalize the Niagara Gateway Tourism Kiosk in Grimsby. As the report lays out, we did it with very little money from the region's point of view, but with the help of the Tourism Partnership of Niagara and a great volunteer group and some serious efforts around and support around this table, that we're able to bring that tourism attraction up to the highest volume, highest face-to-face visitor contact for tourism in the region and arguably in the entire province. specifically because it's at the gateway coming from the Toronto Burlington market. And for very little money, I think the tourism budget, which is not mentioned here, I think the tourism budget for Niagara region is only $50,000 at this point. And we've done a tremendous amount and got a lot of results from that. Notice the council, when it comes to budget time, I'll be pushing for a little more on that. The other thing I wanted to bring up was, and maybe it's an omission, I just missed it, but we did identify working with the federal government on a better deal for Niagara on the seaway management. And there was the report from April where we made the submission to the ongoing commission with the federal government on the future of the management of the seaway and the seaway lands. I think there was a focus in the report on the economic development opportunities along the Welland Canal, the harbors and docks. So I ask you the question about, is it an omission or is it something that's not quite finished yet?
Through Chair to Councillor Timms, so the Seaway project wasn't an initial deliverable under the strategic plan. However, it does fit into the economic prosperity, the overall structure of the strategic plan. So we've embarked on a new initiative. We've brought it to council, and there will be a decision point coming back to council on the potential partnership with the Hamilton Port Authority, the land acquisition of seaway lands there's $280 billion worth of goods that float by the Welland Canal, and we're looking at strategically stopping it in order that some of those goods stop in Niagara region. So we're working with our partners, the Seaway Management Corporation, the Hamilton Port Authority, to work with the federal government on some infrastructure investment to create some port lands right here in Niagara region in order to capitalize on those shipment of goods and services that are coming along the Welland Canal. So it's a specific project on its own, but meets the overall theme of the strategic plan of council of economic prosperity.
Thank you. And so it will be, I think, one of the items that comes to the top of the list for the new term as this commission continues its study and the potential for making some real changes to that contract the federal government has with the management corporation with relationship to Niagara region. So that's, there's a real potential for that for the next term. Hopefully it shows up in the next report. And then finally, one item I do want to ask for a correction on, and that's on the taxation issue on page 32. I'm not sure if I'm reading it right, but there's a regional tax increase 5-year average. And I recall Councillor Quirk and I put forward the motion that changed the target from 2% to 1.5%. We had a budget review committee, and staff offered the 2%, was kind of the expected staff recommendation, and this council agreed that we would target 1.5%. And so it says target December 2018 2%. Can you help me out with that? Because I think that's significant from a taxpayer's point of view that this council continues to press for maintaining that relatively low tax increase average.
Through you, Councillor Chair Barrick, to Councillor Timms, if this perhaps might be an omission on our part, we can certainly take that back.
Thanks. And through Chair to Councillor Timms, you are correct. The budget guidance was 1.5. We've talked about it at the corporate leadership team. It's headed up by finance, and really we're targeting 1.5, and with direction of council, projects of 0.5. So it's 1.5 plus 0.5 for the 2 that's reflected in this chart. So my understanding of council direction, it's a 1.5% target. And what are the projects at the 2% level? Right.
So if you could, what's going to be published here is target 2%, and the specific motion says target 1.5. So maybe some clarification on that would be helpful in the report. And just to conclude then, thank you, Mr. Chairman, the opportunity to present this. We've we did see it at a committee, at a council meeting, and it just kind of flew by us because of other things going on at that particular meeting. So I'm pleased to see it's going to be online and the hard copies are available, at the very least, to the elected representatives of this council and the affected, on our partner councilors around the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Augustine.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. Thanks very much for the presentation. I'm glad Councillor Timms talked about taxation. You know, and I think I'm going to talk about some of the big items that folks think about when they think about the region. So taxation is one of them. I can't find that particular slide in the printed book, but it does talk about taxation, how we had a target and we missed the target this term to what our target was. And in fact, when I run the calculation, this term's increases on taxes are actually more than last term's increases on taxes. Is that what why that chart is red, and is that what that's essentially saying?
Through you, Chair Barrick, to Councillor Augustine, can you help me to identify which metrics you're referring to specifically?
It's the page right here that's red. Page 32.
So if Councillor Augustine, if we're talking about regional tax increases versus tax as a percentage of household income, those are two distinct metrics.
Okay, so we missed the target for the household income, and and we're saying that the 2% target is going to December 2018. So Councillor Timms is asking about the 2019 budget, not the 18 budget. Is that correct?
That is correct, actually.
Okay,
right.
so that's perhaps why it wouldn't be there, Councillor Timms, because it's the 19 budget, and this is. But I guess when one does the calculation for this term versus last term, this term is actually higher in terms of tax increases, overall tax increases. It's over 6% versus last term, which is about 5.75%. So it's about 4% higher this year, the increases or this term, than last term. And I don't know, you know, I guess our targets weren't, we weren't as diligent on our targets, so we met our targets, but they're actually higher than what we did last term. Is that what that's saying?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Augustine, I wouldn't characterize it that way. We as an organization have met the council tax target guidelines each year. And so if you look at the metrics, how we compare those total taxes of a household income, we set some measures, and we, as you referenced, we didn't get there. We're close. The baseline was 4.5, and our target was 4.4, and last year it was at 5. So we had some increases, but those increases are a reflection in this chart of council set guidelines that we met as staff.
Okay.
And we didn't run deficits. And then how is that measured to household income? That's how I would characterize it.
Okay, thank you for that. So we met the council targets?
Yes.
Okay. It doesn't comment on whether it's higher or lower than last term?
Yeah. And
Okay.
to your point, so that would be correct, and we can provide that.
Okay,
Yes.
great. The infrastructure one on the page before, I just want to understand this. Our target was 0, and by my read on this one, we actually increased the infrastructure deficit by 140%. So it went from 235 million to 566 million. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Augustine, so you are correct. There is an infrastructure gap here within Niagara region. And I would submit to you that this infrastructure gap exists right across Ontario in every single regional municipality. When I talk to my colleagues, this is one of the #1 issues we're communicating with the Minister of Infrastructure and his team. The fact that infrastructure deficit, infrastructure gaps are increasing each year right across Ontario. And that's why we're waiting to see what the phase 2 of the federal infrastructure funding is, and then what are those stream targets for us to leverage that to reduce this gap. So it is a trend. It's a concerning trend. Council did address it, that by 2 years ago, you added 1% to the levy in order to try and reduce this gap, but it's not nearly enough, and we need a federal fix on the infrastructure gap.
Okay, thank you. And it's interesting, having attended AMO, and I know a number of us did, the AMO presentation by Nick Nanos, I think, talked about the importance of infrastructure and how municipal infrastructure is 9% essentially of all the infrastructure that's done. But the infrastructure is so important to the community. So it is important to perhaps it's something, a document we can look at and use that to lobby the government for additional funding. It is concerning that increased so dramatically, and obviously it is a concern across Ontario, but it is something that we need to also deal with here. And that's a concern moving forward. So we have to be careful about that.
And
The transit.
If I may, Chair, just really quickly, today you're going to hear a presentation from our consultants on the asset management, and that is, you're going to see an ask of setting up an asset management office in order that we now coordinate our existing $7 billion worth of assets within the across the region. How do we manage that and how we prioritize that? And you'll see a presentation on asset management office.
Okay, thanks very much. The Burgoyne Bridge is a big thing that's been hot in the community. According to this particular document, it talks about the identifying the 3 key areas for improvement. I think people don't want us to simply identify 3 key areas for improvement. They want us to make sure that it doesn't happen again. I note from the audit report that's coming forward next week that there are 2 of the 8 things that are done, and there's still many that are work in progress, 6 that are either on hold or work in progress. Some of those are quite large in terms of the topics to make sure that we don't have that kind of bridge problem overspending again. So just commenting on that's saying that there's and you kind of acknowledge it by not acknowledging that it's been complete here, but that certainly these are identified, there are improvements that are required. They definitely need to be handled very quickly. Transit is another one here that I thought was, and I don't know if this needs to be corrected or not, Mr. Chair, and that is that it talks about the success of transit and everybody working together, which is great, but it doesn't talk about the extension of the pilot funding because we just don't have our act together on that yet, and it was extended to 2021, and I wonder if that can be added to the report, that essentially the pilot is going to be continued in the same format that it is now and has been since 2008 until 2021. That's something that obviously we need to work on as well. So those are some of the things that I think folks, when they think about the region, they think about those items. And there's lots of work for us to do next term here. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Great, thanks, Councillor. The only item I wanted to clarify on the taxation is with respect to the percentage of household income. To your point, it's trending negatively, but that's total taxes, including local municipalities. If you peel out the region's portion only, it's actually, the percentage of household income is actually declining, and that is stated in the report as well. Councillor Quirk?
Thank you, Chair. Again, my appreciation to not just Majay and your team for putting the report together and all the people involved, but also for the staff implementing it. I know that it's hard to believe, given some of the narrative that's out there, that we've been able to accomplish anything as a council, but it's even more impressive with all the work that has been done when we actually pull together and work collaboratively and cooperatively what we've actually accomplished. I think there's a good news story on every page of this report. To that end, I'd simply like to ask, it is on the front page of the website where you can download it as a PDF. I wonder if I could ask our tech people if we can peel out some of the things and make them accessible via web, because it is hard to read some of the individual reports as a PDF on screen. I know you can download it, but it would be interesting to have it more as a series of web pages for each of these great news stories in the format that's there. I don't know if that's possible or if that can be done, just to make it easier to point to a few things. And I'm glad you brought up the point with respect to the taxes, because I did read the report and it said at this term council, the household income as a percentage would be going down if we peeled out the local area taxes increases that have gone on as well. So I know that the work that we've done, I appreciate Councillor Tim's work in trying to just hold the line on our tax increases is so important. It's the number one issue that we come across all the time. And as the region being the largest share of those property taxes, in some cases, in some municipalities like mine, almost 60% of your property taxes goes to the region. Want to make sure that we're there. One thing that I noticed that wasn't really indicated that I saw was the great work that our public works staff has been doing in keeping our waste management costs and our water and wastewater rates down and low, because those are being allocated to the local area municipalities, and those are savings that can be passed on. It doesn't seem to me that those numbers have been referenced, because I know, again, I know this is what we did this term and not looking backwards on previous terms, but comparatively, I think we did a very good job at keeping our water rates down and our waste management costs down. So I want to appreciate that. So if that could be done, I really appreciate trying to find a way to put this in a web format that people can see, as opposed to just downloading a 40-page document, which I actually do think is awesome, but it's hard for people to see through it. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor D'Angelo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just, a lot of great information in this report. It was well done. Just wanted to highlight one item regarding the Port Robinson ferry system. There's good information in the report. I can't seem to pull it up right now. I don't know if you could put that page up on the screen. Yeah, I just wanted to make a few comments regarding this. With the region's involvement now in the Port Robinson ferry system, and there's a committee set up that operates through City Hall and Thorold. There's a lot of great stuff that's happening. So I wanted to highlight this because it's a perfect example of a great partnership where once the region became part of the system, helped fund it, became more involved. The committee has improved its ridership. They market it. There's actually brochures regarding this ferry system in Union Station in downtown Toronto. So it's marketing just not the Port Robinson Ferry, but Niagara in general. And there's a lot of volunteers that are putting efforts into this. There's been additional cycling routes that have been coordinated and mapped out from the committee. I know Councillor Timms comes to the committee meetings also. There's a lot of great volunteer work that's happening. Niagara Falls, Thorwell, and Pelham have worked collaboratively to make sure their systems all integrate together in terms of trail systems, riding. So when you see a brochure like a report like this, and it shows how much money is being spent, there's a lot of intangibles that are not always captured in there, but go beyond the fact that money's been spent there, that you have committees, you have volunteers, and everyone's pulling together collectively on one particular item that affects them in the area, but then it affects the region as a whole because it's being marketed in that perspective. So I just wanted to make a few comments on that. I appreciate all the staff effort, the effort going into letting the residents know. Definitely, I'll be dropping a bunch of these information flyers out in Port Robinson because they're always wondering what's happening, how things going, and it's part of the communication. Excellent brochure, excellent description of what's going on there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Burrows?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and very quickly, I understand, I have my hard copy of this report and it's terrific, but if a resident was to come into the region and ask for a copy, would that be given to them? It would be. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Yurchuk and CEO D'Angelo. Again, thank you so much for the work you and your staff do all term long throughout the year. There's incredible capacity at the region, over $1 billion budget and 3,500 employees. And I know sometimes the public just sees the antics at the council level, especially during election season, but there is a tremendous amount of positive, great work that the staff here do each and every day. And I'm happy that we've had the opportunity to talk about just some of it in this report today. So once again, thank you. There's nothing to receive on because we already received the report at the previous meeting, but to discuss a little bit more of the great work that staff do every day, I want to pass it over to Commissioner Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make council aware that the region of Niagara has been awarded the 2018 Distinguished Budget Presentation Award by the GFOA. GFOA is an international association of public sector finance officers. It's a fairly prestigious award, and it was based on on achieving and exceeding 14 criteria, which include developing a financial plan and the quality of the presentation. As someone that's new here, I'd love to take credit for that award, but I can't. So I'd like to reach out to Helen and Associate Director Margaret Murphy and their team of leading the team to get us to this point and to be recognized by the GFOA. The region has, as was indicated, the CAO indicated some of the changes that happened a few years ago in the financial management and in financial information. And this has led us to the point where we have a very collaborative budget. I know we always want to ensure that the taxpayer gets the best bang for their buck, both on the rate and as well as the levy. And I think that all of the changes that were made from an informational standpoint and a staffing standpoint a number of years ago have paid off, and it's reflected in this award. The collaborative budget means that there's finance people as well as the operating people that work together to come up with the budget that's brought before you for decisions and discussion. So I'd like to reach out to the entire finance team, led by Helen and Margaret, and all of the operating department people as well that have contributed to that, and just to make you aware. I think the other thing too, I just would be remiss if I didn't point this out. I'm not sure if it came out, but in the latest audit report that Deloitte did in the management letter, there was no recommendations, which is, as someone that's been around accounting statements for a number of years and management letters, they always seem to find something, and I think that's another feather in the cap of the changes that were made at the direction of this council and the good work that's been done by your staff. So, council, I just wanted to make you aware of that.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner, for that. That's great news. So there's two folks
Yeah,
here.
just a comment, Chair. I want to congratulate staff for that, and I want to say that the council decision to buy and operationalize this new software program was momentous. I think it was about $12 million. It might be a little bit more than that. I'm not sure what the total is, but it was money very well spent to get us where we are now with budgeting and with these accolades that are coming from international organizations. Thank you.
Great, well stated, Councillor. Thank you so much. Councillor Height?
Yes, thanks to staff, but Jason Burgess was at the helm at the time, and he should be also congratulated because I think he helped lead the charge and did a marvelous job.
Yes, that's a very good point, Councillor.
Okay, thanks again. Congratulations to all those involved. It's appreciated. We'll move on to items for consideration. We don't have any delegations today, so at this point I'd ask Trish Cardwell, Customer Service Program Manager, and Stan Brown from At Focus to the podium for a presentation respecting the customer service modernization strategy. There is a companion report as well. We'll get the presentation first and then we'll speak to both. So welcome. Thank you.
On our customer service strategic priority for Council. I also want to acknowledge and welcome some of our members from our public sector partners. We have representatives here from Town of Fort Erie, City of St. Catharines, and In Communities 2-on-1. And these people are here to support the initiative as well, as they are members of our newly formed Niagara Customer Service Network. Today I'm just going to give a short video presentation on a summary to date where we are at. We have our consultant here to give you an update on their findings and some summary slides.
Navigating Niagara's various levels of government service can be confusing and difficult. At Niagara Region alone, we have multiple telephone numbers, emails, and counters to access different services and information. We have heard from you and know that you want easy access to service anywhere at any time. With this in mind, Niagara has developed a vision with 4 principles. 1, focus on your needs and suggestions by keeping you engaged on the decisions we make. 2, offer accessible and convenient service through collaboration with public sector partners and investment in customer service enabling technologies. 3, create enhanced service that is responsive to you through implementing strategies for easier navigation of our physical and digital service centers. 4. Empower our staff to assist and meet your needs. We are taking steps to incrementally invest in principal initiatives that will redefine service in Niagara. We will reimagine how we interact with you in our service spaces with innovative wayfinding and implementation of integrated services. We will pilot technology to expand mobile solutions and enhance online self-service offerings. We will strengthen our partnerships with the public sector to collaborate on shared digital tools and processes. And we will redefine how we engage with you in decision-making that will affect how you access government services. Together, we can improve on how you connect to our services and how those services connect with you. Share in Niagara's vision for one customer experience that benefits all.
And I'd like to turn over to Stan Brown from @Focus.
Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. The purpose of our presentation is to really highlight the objective and purpose of our project, what research learnings we have, outline the strategy, its principles and key success factors, and provide you with our recommendations. Our objective was to develop an integrated customer service strategy that strives for excellence in customer experience, that is innovative and puts the customer first. The scope was to be thorough in engagement of the community, whether it be customers, stakeholders, community groups, business, council, regional municipalities, and staff, but also look at leading best practices in public and private sector in Canada and beyond. To that end, we engage over 1,000 stakeholders through web surveys, mail-in surveys, focus groups, by phone, and through workshops, a truly multi-channel approach. We found that the phone is still very popular as a means of engagement with the region, but there was a desire for more digital engagement through web and mobile devices, as well as a strong desire to more self-serve. But it had to be when it suited them best, for status lookups, for timeline service commitments, and knowledge about regional services. But that requires an integrated customer service modernization strategy to be more digitally oriented, self-serve, be more personalized in what is being offered, offer more channel availability, and importantly, develop an internal culture of performance excellence based on performance standards that are measurable and reported, that is, being more transparent. Our research, which included private sector and Canadian public sector, found the following: that many municipalities or many private sector organizations have already progressed through consolidating their call centers to now focusing on digital service delivery. They have the appropriate enabling tools to support integrated, modernized service delivery. That is, they have a customer relationship management system, a knowledge-based system, mobile apps, sophisticated websites, self-service functionality, including e-forms. They have introduced being closer to the customer community service through integrated service counters, through mobile units, through piloting artificial intelligence, being chatbots or virtual assistants. Our assessment was that Niagara region is in the early stages of development relative to these leading practices. There are benefits, and there are benefits of moving forward for the region, cost savings associated with offering services excuse me, on the most efficient channels. For the customer, improved trust and confidence in government, resulting in reduced complaints and inquiries around service deficiencies. And for business, the potential for investment in a community that strives to excel. Integrated customer service modernization strategy means the following: thinking through the eyes of the customer, focusing internally on support for a changed environment. The outcomes of an integrated customer service management modernization strategy is increased customer satisfaction, positioning the region for the future while meeting current expectations, and modernizing service delivery. The vision for our customers: we will deliver responsive, high quality, positive customer experiences every day. We will listen and respect and assist you. We will make it easy to engage with us. We will provide you with access to timely and accurate information and provide flexible ways for us to serve you. We will keep you informed on the progress to help you. To support that, there are 4 principles, in part described in the video already, but we highlight this again. The service principle 1, be customer focused. 3 key success factors. Proactive customer engagement. Contact the customer at the right time and be proactive. Service transparency. Measure, but report on how well you are doing. Customer personalized omni-channel experience. Where possible, and with the permission of the customer, be more personalized in how you deliver the service. Service principle number 2, have accessible and convenient service. That means to make it convenient for customers to deal with you, to work together with regional municipalities to offer services regardless of point of entry, and bring all knowledge in one place, make it timely, accurate, and easy to access, and be transparent and report on performance. Service principle 3, responsive and enhanced service. 3 key success factors. Bring together those services that can facilitate interaction with the customer, whether it be call centers, counters, etc. Make it easy for customers to access Niagara Region in its physical space, and ensure there is robust self-service and an ability to get personalized help when needed. And lastly, focus on empowered staff. Allow staff to service the customer in an intelligent, knowledgeable, and helpful manner, with an ability to stay committed to Niagara Region principles and readiness to change. To achieve success, there are 5 building blocks that start with building the foundation and end with measuring to achieve success. To start, support the entirety of the project. It is a multi-year project and you must be committed to that. Do it in phases. The big bang is not an appropriate approach for Niagara Region. Look at what you have already and make leveraged technology choices. Validate your business cases as you progress through the next milestone, and then invest to the fullest extent in customer engagement. Thank you.
With this in mind, we've already started to initiate some of the work to achieve some of the initiatives outlined in the strategy presented to us. We have engaged with MZE Architects to start developing some conceptual designs of some of our interior spaces to see our reception. And we're looking for innovative wayfinding that can occur, as well as looking for locations for integrated service counters. We also are working in partnership and collaboration with other departments to tie in with other strategic priorities, such as the Brock District Plan, tying in both the interior to the exterior wayfinding and parking to the facility. We've already engaged with many of our public sector partners to start to explore opportunities for engagement in shared tools and technologies for the future. And we're here today to ask you to initiate those capital funds we do need to incrementally invest, as suggested, in some of those customer service enabling technology and tools. Tools that we can do a scalable pilot project on a customer relationship management tool, a knowledge base, some mobile solutions available to our citizens, and investment in improving the call center technology and softwares we have available to us to better measure the data we have on our customers, engage with those customers to better meet their needs and expectations. We do hope to start in a pilot project and eventually grow it to an enterprise-wide solution that may be also offered with our municipal and public sector partners. And we would hope to come back to you within the next year to report back on our progress. I'd like to open the floor to any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your presentation today. I'm going to get a mover and seconder for the report as well. Moved by Councillor Quirk, seconded by Councillor Easton. Thank you. Take questions on both the presentation and the report. I know that the General Manager Carter will also be able to answer some questions, I'm sure. With that, Councillor Burrows.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the report. It's an exciting move forward. Are you aware, like in the last 3 or 4 weeks, that our phone system does not work? I know you're talking about the future, yeah, but I'm trying to deal with currently until we move to the future.
And that will be some of the improvements we'll make. We'll be looking at the phone system and how we can navigate people better through that phone system.
And I appreciate that, and it's not a little fix, but my concern is that the answering machine doesn't work, the direction to other departments doesn't work. And when you get there, there's no answer. So those things are current right now for the residents of Niagara, and maybe it's not your problem as a consultant. I love this kind of approach, but it is a need right now for our residents.
You, Chair Barrick, to answer your question, we are definitely looking more currently at how we can start moving forward to address some of those issues, and some of that will be part of our standards in how we answer.
And I would just add, it isn't start to do it, it's fix what the problem we have, and then start moving into this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Timms.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the presenters, I like the approach and the direction in terms of service to the customers, but I'm not sure on how we're going to measure, the results in terms of the return on investment. The report says that the project was included in the approved capital budget for 2017, and that we're going to today, I guess, initiate or approve $1.485 million from the capital budget to proceed with the project you laid out in front of us. The question always comes up is, how do you identify the benefit, the return on investment for the $1.4 million to get a better answering machine? So there's got to be some, or how do you intend to report back to us on the return of the benefits?
Sure,
if you'd like to.
Okay. One of the recommendations we have made in terms of the implementation is that particular business cases be done for each implementation phase in each implementation project, which means that a certain dollar amount is assigned to it and a certain achievement is to be established. And you will measure against that achievement as time goes on. So if in the first year we're looking at X number of dollars and we're looking at X% improvement in telephone answering rate or less complaints or whatever, those measures are established at the beginning, and we track against that to see how well we're doing. And then we can report that back.
Okay. So the assumption is...
Councillor Timms, General Manager, want to jump in on that response as well?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through to members of council. Yes, so the point of the $1.4 million is not to activate it or spend it at once, I guess you would say. It's to put in measures and to put in, successions that's going to ensure that the money is spent appropriately. There is success behind the services, and that we report back to council on a regular basis to ensure that the funds that are being released are being spent and are being useful with any program or new services that we provide. And further to that, a lot of the stuff that we look at now is based on data and IT and technology. So a lot of the, I guess you would say, reporting and information that we could receive to ensure that the services are accurate could also be done in-house too with some of the programs and softwares that we're going to be purchasing. So it's not just a matter of us just going out and seeing if it works. There's going to be checks and balances throughout the whole process to ensure that the funds are being spent appropriately.
Okay, thank you. So my assumption is that by improving customer service, we'll have more satisfied or happy customers, and we'll spend less time in every department dealing with the unhappy customer. So it's a little difficult to trace that or track that benefit back to this project and say, here's what we spent and here's the identified savings. So I understand it's going to be a difficult measure, but perhaps the way you frame it in terms of each department spending less time dealing with unhappy customers is one way to measure it. So I thank you for the presentation and look forward to the implementation. I guess what you're saying that we've already taxed for this money, it's sitting in capital ready to be spent, and this initiates the gradual phased in spending of that money.
Correct, yes. Council had the foresight in 2017 to allocate these funds, and we obviously needed a master plan / vision to backfill those funds. So yes, that's where we are today. Correct.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Timms. Yeah, so just to be really clear, the funding has already been approved. It's just an initiation request today. Councillor D'Angelo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm quite pleased with seeing us move towards a more customer-friendly service. Presentation was good. Just a couple points. In terms of training of staff, will this be all staff be trained on this? Lately, I've been finding that some of the responses of some of our staff haven't been quickly and when emails are sent to them. So is that also going to be captured in this presentation? Because sometimes I need an answer to a question and I send it to a director or to a commissioner, but I don't get a response. I might as well walk to the building here because I live close by, go talk to someone at a lower level and get a quicker response. So is that going to be addressed through this customer service program?
So if I'm in fairness to you, I'm going to ask the CEO to respond to that. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair, and to Councillor D'Angela and to all committee members. In the event that you're not getting an immediate response, please notify my office and I'll get you the response. So that's utmost important. We're to respond to council. So if council's not getting a response, please let my office know and I'll take care of that right away. And then the second is what I wanted to say is that we don't really have two things that I see in many organizations, and one is the customer service charter, and that this program would establish a customer service charter. How often should staff respond? What is the timeline to respond? Is it the next business day? Those type of principles under a customer service charter I've introduced in other organizations. We don't have one here, and hopefully that's one of the pillars that goes within this business cases and the overall management of customer service.
Okay, thanks for that response. So I'm glad to see that we're moving in that direction because I think timely responses are very critical. And sometimes it's just getting a phone number to call or a person to call. It's been lately been very difficult. I've been finding some of the stuff hasn't come back very effectively.
Councillor, just before you go to your next question, General Manager wanted to comment as well on that point.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the committee members, in addition to that, in terms of how we communicate and how council's up to speed and how is the residents, in terms of technology, and even at AMO, met with numerous consultants that have apps out. You'd go online, say for example, there's a pothole that's damaged, or there's a part of the road that needs to repair in front of your house as a taxpayer. You can actually, for example, take a picture of that, email it in, it's in the app, a councillor will be notified if it's based on their ward or their area and their municipality, and there's a tracking scheme behind it. So the whole system and the whole way of how we communicate, advise our residents, advise council, and be up to speed with respect to our processes and our delivery of services is all extremely high-end technology right now that would minimize, I guess you would say, some of the confusion that some people might have when they call in for repairs or services. So we've already looked into that technology, and I think council is going to be very, very happy and fulfilled with some of this technology that we're going to be presenting. So.
Thank you for the answer. Technology is great, but still the person who deals with it at the end of the day is what makes the difference. And I'll give you an example. It's waste management, or there's an issue with property standards in the city of Thorold. There's a mattress on the city's portion of the boulevard. So I sent an email to bylaw. They said it's not their issue, it's a regional issue. Then they sent me a phone number. So I called the phone number. No response to the phone number. There was no place to leave a message. So hence that mattress now still sits on that boulevard because there's been no response from the region. Thorold's not taking active ownership of it. So you're going to have to make sure there's a communication between the local municipality and the region. So issues like that. So all of a sudden you have frustrated residents because that mattress has now been there 3 weeks. Do I have to go pick it up myself and get rid of it? I shouldn't have to be doing that. I'm just trying to get the right answers. And I followed technology. I went on the Thorold website. I placed the complaint on behalf of the residents to follow through that system. So I think it's incumbent that some of the staff actually follow that system and see how it actually works, because saying it works, it doesn't always necessarily work. So I think that's very important, and I'm just using that as an example. And it leads, I'm not here being critical about anyone. My point is it leads to frustration, so then you have taxpayers that are unhappy, so then they lash out at both the councilors, the city councilors, staff, so everyone takes a beating on this issue, when a good coordinated effort could have resolved this situation very easily. That email could have been easily forwarded to Waste Management at the region and had been dealt with. So that's the point I was trying to make, and I'm hoping that's being captured here, because customer response is going to be critical, but if you start addressing everyone's concerns, more and more people are going to be calling you with more problems because now they know they can be handled, so you may have an increase in volume. So I just want to make those points. The other point I wanted to make on your presentation here, you looked at, it said reimagined physical space, Campbell West, Campbell East, and then exterior space. One of the points that always bothers me, and it wasn't done with council approval, is we put these spaces for parking in front of almost the closest spots in front of the building are reserved for councilors. Councilors aren't the customers. They're the ones that come here and actually do work on behalf of the residents. They shouldn't have the closest parking spots to the building. And there's a whole row of them. So what I do, because I'm out there once in a while, and parking is an issue here. Sometimes I have to park far away, and I talk to someone, and they say, well, geez, I can't find a parking spot. Meanwhile, I see 6 councilor spots used up. I tell the general public, please use those councilor spots. They're not reserved for councilors. It's just a sign there. So I'd like to see stuff like that change so you become more customer friendly to the general public as opposed to customer friendly to the councilors here. If I have to walk an extra half kilometer to get here, so be it. But I don't think we should have reserved spots right in front of the entrance here at Campbell West. That's just my opinion. I don't know how the rest of the council feels, because they were just put up on the whim of one councillor who wanted access, quick parking, so they could come here on a daily basis, in and out. I don't think that's good customer service, but that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor CAO.
Through your chair to Councillor D'Angelo, I wholeheartedly agree with you. Parking here is horrendous. And in our International Civic Park plan, parking is one of the priorities to address customer service here. So your points are well taken, and it's part of our civic plan for the overall area here. So it's the Brock District Plan, and then our International Plaza, and parking is a key component of it.
Thank you, Councillor Edgar.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure that all of these nagging little annoyances will be cleared up with this new system, and I'm really, really excited about it. I love the presentation, and it takes me back, Mr. Chair, to my days in the sales industry, in industrial sales, where it was really, really important that I, as a sales rep, made the effort to know my customers better, and consequently would be rewarded by my efforts. And I think that we'll all be rewarded as well by these efforts. But my main question, Mr. Chair, is on the financing in the amount of $1,485,000, and I understand the idea being that it will be initiated. In other words, it's sitting someplace waiting to be used. But we, as a lame duck council, is it within our legal right to initiate this amount of money at this time?
CAO.
Through Chair to Councillor Edgar, so you are within your council roles and responsibilities, because it has already been budgeted, that it is permissible for you to expend these funds.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Easton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to direct my questions to the CAO.
Sure.
Mr. CAO, I don't want to criticize the staff for the report, but I would ask that you consider that the report really presents an important subject that has many different parts to it. We've had conversations before about some suggestions that you had about a centralized methodology. And I agree that that is a way to approach the public pretty directly in a very short time period. So my question is really, how do I take that message out of this, because there are many disparate parts to this. I'm having difficulty sorting out what the focused approach is. And there's so many different parts. There's wayfinding in here. There seems to be in the presentation quite an emphasis on digital, which I think there should be a high dependence on direct contact. So, Mr. Chairman, through you, if the CAO could help me understand these elements better.
Thank you, Councillor. So I'm happy to ask the CEO to respond. I think that the presenters did a great job explaining it. The last slide, integrated customer service timeline, I think explains it quite well. But the CEO can respond, and if any of the presenters would like to also respond, that's fine too.
Thank you, Chair. To Councillor Easton, I was just going to provide a general statement and go back to the manager, Trish, to give you a more detailed response. But I'm happy to see some of our local municipal partners here in the audience. And so there are, as you indicated, a lot of moving parts, but we don't want to duplicate our efforts of what the local municipalities are doing or how to leverage together to get a centralized support that you and I have talked about before. So Councillor D'Angelo gave a great example of an issue that just went back and forth between the two municipalities. With an integrated centralized support system, I should say, in partnership with our local municipal partners, that doesn't happen. Someone's not bounced from telephone to telephone. So maybe, Trish, you can elaborate the overall system and then how we're communicating with our local partners to make sure we're not doing duplication of effort. And to the councillor's point, there's a lot of moving parts. And so how are we defining each of those parts?
Okay, so through you, Mr. Chair. We are going to be working with our municipalities and our local other public sector partners as well to look at ways we look at the processes we develop. We're also looking internally at our own departmental processes and looking at ways we can start integrating some of those services. So for example, if someone's coming in person for some of those services, can we start to direct them to a centralized location rather than sending them all over the building? Can we also, when we take a telephone call with the appropriate technological tools, allow us to do some first contact resolution to help that person with their issue? And through back-end mechanisms put in place through the technologies, be able to communicate between the different various municipalities or other organizations, as well as through a CRM, which will allow us to internally track who's taking on from a behind-the-scenes view the task and taking care of it and letting the frontline staff know when it's complete so we can provide a better response to our citizens when they do call in for a status of that.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, my apologies for the question, but I was having some difficulty being able to target that system element. I didn't hear it in the explanation, and I really didn't see it on this chart, so I appreciate your explanation. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's why we're here, to ask those questions. Thank you. Councillor Height.
Yes, through you to staff, regarding the @focus chart on page 8. I'm not sure how quickly you can bring that up, but I'll make some comments first before I ask a question about that. I was concerned about the lame duck aspect, and obviously we've heard that. Thanks to the CAOs for his comment, because I've sent him emails, he's responded fairly quickly. I've sent some directors emails, and on occasion, I don't hear back from the directors right away, and they can be busy. But what's really interesting is if someone's on holiday, they'll say, if you don't, I'm on holidays for so many days, if you need to get a hold of me, contact so-and-so person. And I think staff are doing a great job at doing that. So it's an automatic that when they're off on holidays, off for a few days, they respond to us making aware, okay, if you can't get the answer from me because I'm away, get a hold of this other person. Great customer service for us as counselors. And I'll compliment staff as well, because I've seen the change around here when I come to the counter where the staff who are working at reception are saying, can I help you? How are you today? Good morning, with a smile on their face. Nice to see for a change, because I've noticed it. In my 40+ years in management, from a drug chain to the last business that I was involved with, on a yearly basis, I would be talking to people and training them about customer service. I wish I had the sheet of paper in front of me, but it sort of said something like, the customer is always right. And if rule number 1 doesn't apply, go to rule number 2, and that is the customer is always right. The taxpayer is the customer. We are the customer as well, in a sense. Staff are working for us. I'm not sure who is really the customer, but we've, over the number of years, said, guess who the real customer is to the region? The 12 municipalities are our customers, and we're treating them much better. So some of that is happening and has happened over the years. If we get to that graph, and maybe it can't come up, but it speaks about, I need an explanation. How would you rate the customer service provided by the region? And the answer is, counselors, it's excellent, 25%. Staff, 14%. Is the staff 14% what you want to bring up to 75%?
You want to bring up both to 75%.
Well, that's good to hear, because when you talk about excellent and good, in both cases, counselor and staff, we're over around the 70%, which you're saying 75's that level. I would say we'd want to be at 99%, not 75. We want everyone to feel that they're important to us when they encounter either staff at the counter or any staff working on their behalf. Because when you go to businesses and stakeholders, that number is even more impressive, because we're at over 80%, and that's good to hear. We want to treat everyone well. I'd like to see the number at 100%. We know that's not going to happen. But I was concerned about that graph, because when it says staff only at 14%, that's a terrible number. When counselors are even better than staff, staff are getting paid to really respond all the time. So are we, in a sense, but we're not full-time, they are. Something was brought up about parking and the initiative in the International Plaza. How much of that $1 million+ is being initiated by what we're doing today with that International Plaza? Or are you speaking generally, that's part of that $1.4 million, and it could be 6 months or a year down the road? I'm not sure who wants to answer that. Maybe Chris does.
Go ahead. Mr. Chair, through the members of committee, yes, generally we're speaking. There's still other phases and implementation plans required for that, but it is going to be a collaboration, so generally speaking.
Well, the collaboration is important, because my major concern, and we've heard that the CEOs even commented parking's an issue. We've heard from Councillor D'Angelo about the parking. I brought up the issue about how many accessible parking spots are right in front of this building instead of spread around the building, and they're always empty. Now, I know we have to do a number, because that's what the law says, but they should be distributed throughout the building, not 20 in a row that are just about always empty, but they should be at all of our entrances, and more of them at their entrances instead of one place. But our major concern with any of this construction around the regional headquarters is we aren't guaranteed enough parking for our own staff. It's horrendous. We know it. There's thousands of staff and visitors that we want to be able to access this building, and we're currently renting space that we aren't assured that we're going to have forever. We have a major parking problem up here, folks, and that has to be addressed before we do much else about the international area and reconfiguration, because we've got to address that for the future, not worry about tomorrow, but worry about 5 and 10 years down the road, because that's critical. That should be number one. Resolve how we're going to deal with parking. I remember when I was downtown in St. Catharines in the Downtown Association, and parking was a problem that couldn't easily be resolved. We have that issue to deal with before we start spending millions of dollars on where we fix the inside of this building, because we have to make sure people can park and figure out which is the right area to come into this building, and maybe it should be one focal point and not two. It might be better to do it that way. We might have to ramp the parking. We've got a lot of work to do, I think, before we start spending millions of dollars. Those are some of my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Augustine.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. The report and the the recommendation before us are different? Maybe I'm sorry I missed that, but why is it that there's no net savings out of this? This is just costs?
Director Chamberlain?
Through the chair, that was just an error in the clerical error in the report when we were preparing the recommendation, so it was just a clerical correction. It's gross and net, it's all capital levy dollars. There's no external contributions to this particular project, so the gross and net are one and the same.
Thanks. Are there, the report talks about, Mr. Chair, talks about, we don't even know what our baseline is in some circumstances. And Councillor Tim's asked about ROI, return on investment. So do we know what this is going to save us? Often when you put in, you know, initiatives, technology, et cetera, it kind of saves you money.
Perhaps look to the general manager. I'm not sure the intent is cost savings, but rather greater customer service delivery, so we'll get clarity.
Through the chair, through the members of council, that is correct. Right now there is no formula for a cost saving per se right now. Again, that's going to be evaluated in the future, but right now it's actually for, as per the chair's comments, it's actually increasing the service delivery and the service model that we currently have for our residents.
Okay. I guess the report's on the floor, is it? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So for debate, I've been opposed to these changes, these recommendations that have been brought forward to us over the years. I voted against it in the budget. I voted against it previously. I think people in the community expect our staff and councillors, but predominantly staff, to provide the best customer service and to do so within the budget. I don't think we need to make these changes. I think they should be encapsulated within current budgets. We heard earlier how strategic plans were on the side of people's desks. I think customer service is job one, and I'm going to be voting against this. I think when people see this, they will go crazy because they expect staff to provide the best customer service all the time. So it should be incorporated in the work that they do. Mr. Chair, I don't need a response from staff. That's my opinion, and that's why I'm voting against it. I know you're going to try and do that and get into a debate, but I'm just telling you why I'm voting against this. I've been consistently opposed to this. I know when we set up systems in the town, much like Mr. Carter's talking about, you know, we've been doing that for a number of years. It's included in existing dollars, and I would encourage us to do that here. I think most staff, obviously, staff want to provide the best customer service and want to do so, and I think they can do that with the dollars that we already have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Certainly is not a debate that your opinion is your opinion, but I don't want to leave the inference that somehow regional staff do not deliver good customer service.
I didn't say that. I'm just saying that I think
it is slightly inferred, but I do know
that's
that
not what I said.
the CAO and the general manager would like to offer some comment as well. Understanding it's not a debate. CAO.
Thank you, Chair, and respectfully to Councillor Augustine, from my vantage point, looking at customer service and then putting an emphasis on customer services, bringing it under the portfolio of the general manager to focus on customer service, I would submit to you, we don't give staff the appropriate tools to deliver great customer service. And so what this report and what the initiation of these funds does is gives staff the tools. It has been referenced by Councillor Height. Some of them don't cost money. Sometimes it's just lifting up your head and saying, hey, welcome, can I help you? And that doesn't cost a thing. So to that point. But on other points is that we do know, as Councillor Burrows indicated, our telephone system crashes. We don't even know about it until someone gets us another way and says, your telephones are down. By implementing this technology, gives staff the tools and to implement good customer service. We don't have a baseline, and thus for our return on investment, by putting in a technology, establishing the baseline, we can now measure our performance from this point moving forward. So thanks for the opportunity to provide some comments.
Councillor Volpatti.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the report. I think what I have to say is that I know that this building was built in the early 70s, when there was a fortress mentality about all campuses, because we'd all been through the 60s when there were, bad things happening on campa everywhere. So yeah, at University in Buffalo, for example, the new campus was a fortress. This building looks like a fortress to me. And I hope that somehow we can change that. I never fail to leave here that somebody says, am I in Campbell East or Campbell West? And where is Niagara Regional Housing? And where do I go about health? Because I need a health-associated program. It is a terrible layout for customers who are coming here. Besides the parking, they have no idea, because all it says Campbell East, Campbell West. I still don't know where I am. I could be in either one, but I think I'm in Campbell West. Am I in Campbell West? I'm in Kansas. Yeah, I'm in Kansas, all right. So I really appreciate that we have to spend money to make some physical changes that are so necessary so that it doesn't look like a fortress and act like a fortress. Thank you very much for this report.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks for the report. And I think it is a really critical exercise you have to go through. And I'm thinking of we have different demographics that we have to deal with, and our customer service is going to be perceived quite differently. I know our mayor had brought up the fact that we like to have a real person a lot of the time. That I'm one of the old gray guys, and that's the millennials. However, they don't necessarily require that. So it's a balancing act, and I know that the investments that are necessary have to be balanced that way. So I didn't see anything in the report that bothered me that way. I would be remiss, however, if I didn't mention the fact part of customer service, and when I heard the term fortress, part of customer service is making sure that an independent press has access to accurate information on a timely basis. So I won't go into it at length. I think we all know around the table here what we're talking about. There is an aspect to good customer service that has to be addressed, and certainly I hope it will be in the next term of council very quickly to renew that partnership, because they are literally a free independent press is an important partner. And I know there's some people around the table who refuse to answer questions, and I believe that that's a fundamental, absolutely a fundamental breakdown in our customer service. So anyway, thank you for your report, and I know you're going to have some interesting work ahead.
Thank you. And to address a couple of your points, the report suggests that multiple channels be available to the customer, whether it be millennial, Generation X, or whatever age group they happen to be. But have multiple options in terms of the telephone is always going to be available, but I can do some things at night. I can do some things in self-serve. I can do some things by just looking up my information and walking away from it. And that's part of the approach that's being recommended. And we mentioned quite a bit in the presentation today, but also in the report, transparency. Having standards, being able to report against those standards, and report to the public about those standards. Have visibility into the organization, and that's part of your open government philosophy.
Okay, thanks very much. Seeing no other speakers, I'll call the question on the report. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. Ms. Cardwell and Mr. Brown, thank you so much for your patience standing at the podium this whole time. Appreciate it. So we do have a rather time-sensitive item, and I see the agenda is carrying on today. I'd like to, with committee's blessing, move directly to item 6.5. That's GM 2018 Niagara Falls Public Health Accommodations Capital Initiation. That one I'm being advised is rather time-sensitive in the event we run out of time. That's fine. Councillor Volpatti, moved by, seconded by Councillor Timms. Thank you. Thank you to the clerks for putting it on the screen already. Are there questions or comments to this item? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thanks so much. So moving along to then item 6.3, that's the asset management governance, CSD 51, 2018. Is there a mover and seconder for that item? And there's a presentation as well. Moved by Councillor Burrows, seconded by Councillor Easton. Thank you so much. At this point, I would like to invite Roop Lutchman and Aman Singh from GHD Advisory to the podium for a presentation respecting the asset management governance model. And then we'll take questions to the presentation and report as well. Welcome.
Committee members, ELT and staff, good morning, and thank you for allowing us to present to you today on your asset management program. Today is a key milestone on your journey for asset management, trying to figure out how do you staff implementation of the program and sustaining the program. I just want you to remember when we presented maybe a year and a half ago, the definition of asset management is a set of integrated processes for owning, operating, managing assets to meet expected levels of services at an acceptable level of risk and the lowest cost of ownership. And that's really what this piece of the project is about. How can you find the right governance model to make that happen? I have a few slides in addition to what Michael had done in the report to you. Just wanted to remind you, how do we get to this point? There were objectives set up by the region for asset management, moving on your council priority for a comprehensive asset management program to sustain operational excellence and fiscal responsibility in investment strategy and planning. You looked at integration of information across the departments, making the right decisions, understanding the impact of work that's not done, usually because you didn't have the funding to make it happen, enriching your long-term asset planning and the financial planning and budgeting that goes with that, consistent, uniform, transparent way to report on your assets, looking at realistic alternatives for projects and prioritizing those projects based on risks to your business, and then having a completed asset management plan that embodies everything you want to do around the life cycle of the assets. So based on that, the region had embarked on the phase 1 project. Out of that, we were fortunate to work on that project with your staff here. And we came up with a roadmap of improvement initiatives with associated funding to implement those initiatives. We came up with your updated asset management plan as of 2016. And we looked at your IT technology enablers and made some recommendations. How can we bring that into the more modern environment, as you did with your financial software product that seemed to have gone really well. One thing we did recognize was that for you to move beyond this point, you needed to have a governance model in place that allowed better collaboration across the silo business units so that you could get the benefits of asset management. And we said before you go too far down the road trying to implement with asset management at the side of the desk with the current establishment, that you need to look at a proper best-in-class practice for governance. And that's was the next project that the region undertook, to develop a governance model, which we presented on today, and then to look at the organizational impact analysis, which is more the tactical operational aspect of the governance model. So today we want to present on what the governance model is and the recommendations, and this is an important step in the process because we're looking to add some additional FTEs, and I'll give you some rationale as to why that's important. One key point on the governance model, if I may say, I think the region is late to the party on asset management and governance. All your peers, the big regions all around have already been past this route, have funded a governance model. Region Appeal has just hired their director of asset management. They've integrated the asset management office, City of Toronto, Toronto Water, and even the lower tier municipalities, City of Vaughan, City of Barrie, all these different cities have already gone past this milestone. So what does governance model require from a best-in-class practice? If you want to do good asset management, there are 4 key pillars you got to excel at. You got to excel at the strategic planning. Strategic planning interprets your strategic plan, council priorities, and the level of service that your customers expect. It was quite an excellent presentation on customer satisfaction, customer excellence. If asset management is a key part of that, if you take care of your assets and they reliably deliver the level of service that people are paying for, your 12 municipalities and customers, then customer satisfaction is going to be way easy. So there's the strategic planning, the growth master planning, the renewal replacement planning, and the operation and maintenance planning. You got to excel at that stuff. You also need to be able, if you've done the plan, let's execute the plan flawlessly in how we deliver projects, how we operate and maintain assets, and how we monitor the performance of these assets against levels of service. And that's where we look at performance. We look at the knowledge around the assets to make sure it's the right knowledge, it's updated, and it's shared, and it's accessible for everybody as staff move in and out of the region. And the last pillar is program delivery. There's been a lot of talk about program management. Maciej talked about that. And that is fundamental. You spend millions and millions of dollars on delivering projects. Assuming they were the right projects through the planning, then we got to be really good at delivering. It's like deliver it as soon as possible. Those are the 4 pillars of asset management. And you need a common, consistent approach at the corporate level. And then every business unit or department need to take that and execute that framework or policy and vision for asset management. And there are areas that span all business units. There's information systems, enterprise systems, data management. There is the human resource or the people aspect and the financial management piece. And what you try to do is ensure everybody does strategic planning for asset management the same way. So you create networks across all business units where they meet on a regular basis, share the cool stuff that's going on, discuss opportunity gaps, and put things in place to close those gaps and improve your maturity in asset management. Same with productivity, looking at the assets, how can we squeeze these assets' responsibility, get more value for money, before we say, hey, we can't maintain anymore, we need to do a capital project. Same with performance knowledge management, and of course, how you deliver projects. So that's the leading practice in terms of how you collaborate around the asset management framework and realize the definition of asset management. When you do that, there are a few things that the business case or rationale for asset management. I mentioned already this was one of your highest key strategic priority for council that set the stage to make this happen. But what's happened January this year, the government, the provincial governments came up with Ontario Reg 588/17 that mandates you shall do asset management in the public sector. It requires you have an asset management plan, you have a policy framework, you have levels of service documented, there are timeframes to make this happen, but you got to have point responsibility and executive in charge of asset management. And that's what's driven a lot of the governance models that have been put in place in all these regional municipalities and the second-tier municipalities. Asset management allows you to make better decisions based on risk on your life cycle strategy. Helps you through risk understand the preventive maintenance for your critical assets, extend reliability, extend the life of the asset before saying, hey, we can't maintain anymore, we got to do a project. Now you have the right project that you're going to do on the assets, so you're spending your capital dollars in the right place at the right time. Essentially, asset management allows you to do right things, which is maintenance and operational tasks, capital projects, at the right time, at the right cost, and the right reason. And it gives you the confidence that you're doing it at the right time. And there is real savings. Besides meeting the intent of the regulation and having an asset management plan, and the fact that you can't get funding or gas tax money unless you have an asset management plan, and the project is identified in the plan, there's future municipal, federal, and provincial funding that's going to impact, you need to demonstrate you're doing asset management and you have the asset management plan. We've found in practice, and you could search that on the internet, there are many people who've reported significant savings on asset management programs. Region of Waterloo, for example, when we worked with them, within 1 year, they demonstrated $12 million savings on their capital program because they went through the planning process and they said, why are we doing these projects? They're not high risk. Why are they in the capital program? Because they had not followed a robust, comprehensive approach to coming up with your capital program. I've also, in my book on asset management, sustainable asset management, identified a whole chapter devoted to a business case for asset management that we've been using at the region for your program. So here's what we're asking on behalf of your staff. In the orange, we're saying create a corporate asset management steering team with representatives at a senior enough level that they could provide good guidance, direction to staff as they implement your program and move maturity forward. Then create a corporate asset management office like a lot of other municipalities your peers have done. And the ask is for new FTEs, a director of asset management reporting into Todd, the ERMS commissioner on the finance side, and 3 managers, and you'll see that in the next slide, and 3 supporting analysts. So it's 7 new FTEs that's been asked for. It's laid out in terms of the roles, responsibilities in the report. And in green, these are looking at existing roles and responsibilities, and there are quite some roles, responsibilities in asset management that's been done currently, and we're looking to rebrand those and add additional roles as necessary to make them comprehensive enough to do what's needed. We're looking at formalizing decentralized delivery of asset management in all the different departments through the appointment of an asset management, through rebranding existing job descriptions, looking at the role of planners, schedulers in areas where you have infrastructure that's more suited to proper planning and scheduling of work, like water, wastewater, transportation, looking at reliability type staff who could extend reliability or the mean time between failure and extend the life of the asset, the effective life, so you get the most out of it before you decide you're going to do a capital project to renew it or replace it. And then looking at the idea of long-term support through analysts and different roles. So that's sort of what we're looking for in the recommendations. And this is what the organizational chart looks like. The steering team pretty much providing direction in the initial stages of your program. Ideally, the steering team wants to work its way out of a job and have the asset management office take over and implement initiatives to improve maturity and then sustain the program and get you to the stage of continuous improvement and creating innovative ways and cheaper ways to deliver service. The asset management office reporting to the director, these are the 3 managers we're looking at: strategy and integrated program planning, integrity or condition assessment and productivity, and then performance and knowledge management with an analyst under each of them. On the left side, we would have the partners, the region partners like regional housing and police services will have the same equivalent manager, maybe rebrand one of the existing positions that does a lot of that right now. And they may have analysts, planners, schedulers, and different tactical roles as needed. And then the reporting into Mache, but working closely with the steering team and asset management is your program management office, your project management office. You've already put that in motion. There's a lead for planning and delivery and departmental leads for projects. So you could put a big checkbox that's in place. The right side is what you need to be implementing at this point. And I think that's the presentation. Be happy to take any questions. Hope this added some more context to the report that was circulated earlier on.
Great, thank you, Mr. Luchman. Appreciate your presentation today. We do have a speakers list for questions to the presentation as well as the report. Councillor D'Angelo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we could just put that last slide on that was presented in the presentation.
This one?
Yes, it's quite descriptive, and I think it's really good. Just a few questions on that through you, Mr. Chair. I guess I just need a bit more clarity myself. When you talk about NRH and the NRPS, you talk about rebranding. But when you talk about the region, so you can see the green, a lot of rebranding and a potential. So that's taking existing positions and then just retitling them, but they're still doing the same type of work. Is that what you mean by rebranding?
Well, to you, through the chair, rebranding is taking existing position where there's quite a lot of asset management related roles, responsibilities, but adding additional roles that would bring them up to the best in class activity that they may need to be doing.
Okay.
So you're adding a few additional roles there.
Okay, so through you, Mr. Chair, then I could see that, it makes sense. But then you go to the regional side now, and you're asked, I don't have the slide in front of me, but there was an ask for 6 additional FTEs. So we are, at this point in time, we do nothing on the regional side regarding asset management?
So
we need 7 new people because we don't do anything right now regarding this?
Well, to you through the chair, you are doing asset management in silos and informal ways. And when we did your analysis and your maturity assessment, the region overall was on the international scale for maturity in asset management from 0 to 5, or in a sense to excellence. The region was around a 2.2, which is between awareness and establishment. You have a long way to go to get to competence and enterprising and excelling. Most municipalities we've worked with and private clients we've worked with get to establishment with the current governance model, which is business as usual, and no dedicated asset management personnel, and are unable to move beyond that. They never get to competence, they never get to excelling. We work extensively with municipalities in Australia, New Zealand, the UK, in the rest of Canada, and the US, and we've seen this play out time and time again. The folks who have been able to move past that and demonstrate excellence in asset management have implemented at a corporate level an dedicated asset management folks, but they also look at rebranding at the departmental level because people have been doing that informally. You formalize their roles in most cases, and you may make that investment up front, but the return on that investment is significant, especially when you're looking at a growing infrastructure base and a growing community. This is the time to make that type of investment.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, Councillor, if I may, Director Chapman wanted to add a little context on that last question.
Through the chair, perhaps I might add a little clarity, because I think what may not be as clear and may be causing some confusion. If you look at that column where it says directors, NRH and NRPS, so that is proposing a similar structure for regional departments as well as the ABCs. It's not just the ABCs. So that whole structure of creating those roles and responsibilities within the individual departments to do the more operational and strategic pieces within those departments would follow a similar structure. So it's not to say that we don't have staff in the departments. We do. It would be the similar process of looking at what they do and maybe modifying the roles and responsibilities somewhat to get to this best in class. What's being proposed here as that's net new, it's creating that corporate structure, that model of the orange roles, which would oversee all the departments to be able to bring them together so that they're not acting in those individual silos, potentially reporting up through their directors, commissioners, et cetera, but their leadership would be provided through that asset management, governance, and those are the new roles, not all of the departmental and ABC roles.
I guess my confusion stems on the fact I see that, and it shows me that we need all these new employees, but yet the 2 other organizations, the 2 other ABCs do not need any new employees. Or are you saying that they'll need new employees also to move this forward?
Through the chair, what we're saying is right now, we're not proposing any departmental resources until the exercise of reviewing all the jobs, both in departments and in the ABCs, are evaluated to determine who's doing what and what is just a modification of some skill sets and some job requirements in order to adopt the best in practice and the requirements of the asset management governance. But it's in the governance and in providing that leadership, we don't have those roles and we don't have those roles established. So no resources are being asked for at a departmental level at this point for either departments or ABCs. That's all the green rebranding.
Okay, so the orange means they're not necessarily new positions, they may just be reallocations of staff that's...
No, orange is, sorry, excuse me, through the chair, orange is new. The green is departmental and ABC rebranding.
Okay, so we're hiring 7 new people, but the ABCs at this point in time aren't going to do anything until the 7 have established the corporate structure here at the region.
If I can, the motion is to refer the item to the 2019 budget process, so the decision today is not to hire or not hire, it's just to refer it to the budget, 2019 budget, which is next term.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to flush out, shouldn't you look at what potential is going to be required for the ABCs in terms, because if we move forward this, then you're putting pressure on them to continue with this, so they'll have some new hires potentially in there. And I think that needs to be known, not just rebranding, that there's additional new hires. That's more of what mine. But if there's more information coming at the next budget, that'll get itself hopefully flushed out a little bit more at that point in time. Because if you're going to ask for those ABCs to hit guidance and you're putting more pressure on them by adding this element, which I agree with in principle, moving forward with asset management, the importance of it, what it'll do for you. But let's be clear on what's going to happen in the overall. There'll be more hires potentially at both of the ABCs and potentially at the MPCA regarding the asset management plan. So I think that needs to be a little bit more clear for council that this is step 1, but what is step 2 going to look like?
Through the chair, one of the items that Rup identified is in the far right-hand column there on the slide, the to be determined. So the very next step that would follow is that organizational impact analysis to actually then dig into the individual roles and responsibilities of the departments and the ABCs. We've not ignored the fact that that may not net the result that we want and that there is already roles. It's just perhaps finessing some of the skill set or perhaps finessing some of the requirements in order to comply with the legislation and the regulations and just making that that clarity in their job descriptions so that we can comply with all the regulation. So that's going to be undertaken in this next step, and it will actually identify if that is achievable or not achievable. And absolutely there is the possibility that in order to meet the high level and the high standard that we need to, we may not have the resources, in which case then there could be additional asks.
Okay, then just follow up to you, Mr. Chair. Then will that be information be brought forward at the budget deliberations so that council has a better idea of the cost implications at that point in time?
Yes.
Through the chair, yes, we're going to continue, and it's just because of the process of having a little bit of break here in the council, we weren't able to establish the timing of being able to bring that next step, but we do expect that we would have it in advance of the budget.
Okay, thank you. That clears up my little clarity issue. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Easton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. My question is really related to somewhat to what Councillor D'Angelo was speaking about. The new positions and this last column, the impact analysis, should we understand that there is, at the present time, no staff that have the requisite skills to carry out these activities between 3 and 7? Is that what we should understand?
Well, to you through the chair, there may be staff who might have some of these skill sets, but they don't practice the requirements for an asset management office or an asset management director. If you were to publish those positions and go out for recruiting, you might very well find 1 or 2 people who have had some certification, training, and have done some of that, who could step up in that role. But this should be a new FTE position.
All right, Mr. Chairman, the whole issue of staff development, it appears to me that there's opportunity here. I mean, 7 positions is really pretty significant. I can appreciate we're going to debate this a little bit later. However, on a pilot basis, to look at some secondment between now and when we have that budget process is certainly something that I would be looking for. It may require a significant cultural shift for us to do that, but I think it's important. So I guess I'll leave it. I'll leave it with that. I'm not comfortable with this number 7, and I'd like to see what other ways that we can achieve it. I think absolutely the principles are laudable. Of course, we should be moving in this direction, but I'm looking for more flexibility in the application. 7 is too much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gale.
Thank you, Chair. And by you saying that this is just for referral to the 2019 budget process, I can say yes to this. But if it was a vote today, I'd say no to this. Because in the line of Councillor Easton's question, I have a big question here. Who does this now? To me, it looks like another layer of 7 FTEs that we would have on this. And we're going to have a fulsome conversation, or the council next would have a fulsome conversation on this in 2019. Am I correct on assuming that?
That is correct, sir.
So I have a few questions on this for the presenter, but I can support this to be referred down to this, but I agree with Councillor D'Angelo's questions. Pretty well, I won't repeat everything you said, but they were right along the line of what I had there with regards to the police and NRH and that. But you had mentioned, through you to the speaker, you had mentioned $12 million savings. I believe it was Waterloo when you first did this. How many of these have you done? And I'd like to know the other people, not just the $12 million savings. How many were 0? Or a question down the way I'll ask.
Yeah, to you through the chair, we did the asset management program in the region of Waterloo a couple of years back, 2 or 3 years back. They've staffed their asset management office. They've continued implementing the
I understand there, but my question is, did you do Toronto? Did you do others? How many have you done? And what's the average savings to these people?
Well, to you again through the chair, we've done Toronto Water, City of Barrie, City of Oshawa, City of Vaughan. We've done many in Australia, New Zealand.
So thank you for that. I don't need the answer now, but the next time you make this presentation, I will want to know what you saved on all of them, not just the highlight of 12 million, because that perked us all up saying 7 FTEs at how many dollars a year at $12 million is a gold mine. But how many were 0 on that? So I'm just preparing you for down the way on that. If you come through and tell me $12 million on one, I want to know the others that were nothing to compare it to see if it's worth our investment. Because to me, this is like a warranty on a new refrigerator and that. This is in that type of line. Maybe it's a bad comparison, but I'm buying this as protection. And in the lines of Councillor Easton's question, we might have that protection now on this. So I'd like all these things given to me, not just the 12 million for one. And other than that, as long as this is going to be discussed down the way, I can vote yes on a referral on this, Chair. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gale. Director Chamberlain?
Through the chair, I guess I wouldn't mind making 2 points of clarification. So one, in terms of like the savings, obviously the savings are important, and I think that that's a very critical objective. However, we have a legislative requirement to be able to report many pieces of information which we currently just do not have. So we have a legislative requirement to expand our ability to report and accumulate information and report that back to comply with the legislation. If we don't, we will not only not save money, but we'll potentially lose incremental money from other levels of government. So that's an important aspect to bear in mind. And then with respect to these positions, I think just some clarification. When we did our first part of the project, we did the asset management plan. Council may recall we sought out some additional funding to go out and engage consultants, and it was GHD and Rup and his team to help us put together an asset management plan. We didn't have the skill set in-house to be able to do that ourselves. We have certain departmental staff within each of the departments who are managing our assets, who do certain aspects of asset management. But in order to be able to comply with the legislation, we currently are not doing all that. And we had to make estimations and certainly use best practice to complete some of the data required of our asset management plan. And included in that, we said that as we got better at asset management, we would improve all these areas of our asset management plan. And that's what these resources will do, is they'll allow us to make sure that we have policies with respect to when we refresh the data, documenting all of the pieces of information that are going to be legislative required, so that we don't have to go out and contract. Because some municipalities, eventually, they'll contract the updates out on a periodic basis, but now we have to go to being able to do it ourselves and be self-sustaining, and that's what this would allow us to do.
So through you, Chair, on comments to Helen on this, that in the past, have we been able to meet the legislation to do this? And this is new legislation, and that's why this is required?
Through the chair, this is entirely new legislation with very, very specific deliverables and timeframes and pieces of information. It's very specific. And certainly to even get to, I believe we had a $400,000 budget for asset management, and that was to, put together the minimum requirement of the requirement that we had to have an asset management plan to get gas tax funding. We did that, and now we're proceeding to how can we sustain ourselves? How can we help ourselves on a regular basis so we can have the tools as an organization to make the best decisions and not have to outsource collecting that information every 5 years or doing a refresh, because it's so much more valuable to the organization if we have the trained skill set in-house.
So thank you for that. And through you, Chair, that's another point of information we'll want in 2019 in the budget process to show us how much it would be to contract it out as compared to having FTEs. So this is all valuable information, but we'll defer it to another day, refer it to another day.
Thank you, CAO.
Through you, Chair, to committee members, the one thing I can assure you is that this is a big ask for 7 FTEs as recommended. And we recognize it's a big ask, and we have to fit it within a 1.5 plus 0.5 budget guidance that Council gave us. So we have a lot of work ahead of us in order to bring it and refer it to the 2019 budget. But where we can, we do reallocations. So we developed, and I got to give accolades to my colleague Stuart Henry in the back there. Where we can, we established a project management office, and you could see it incorporated into here, and we did it with not a net new FTE. So where we can, we will establish it. We took a really skilled set team out of IT, and we elevated them to a systemic project management office that's now under the direction of Mache through internal controls. So where we can reallocate, where we do have the skill set, we will. And if we can reduce that 7 to meet our legislative requirements, and we can do it on a reallocation of existing staff, absolutely we'll do it. We did it with project management. There might be an opportunity to do it here. But we recognize what we're asking you. We're asking you for 7 FTEs within a budget guidance of 1.5. We got a lot of challenging work ahead of us, but we will bring to you a very comprehensive way forward during our budget deliberations.
Great, thanks for that. Councillor Height.
Yes, similar concerns as Councillor Gale. I wrote down how many staff can be rebranded. Can't we contract this out? I feel the frustrations, or I'm hearing the frustrations of staff. 7 FTs is huge. We're talking $750,000 to $1 million cost to the corporation. What's our return on investment? How much are we going to save? This gentleman spoke about saving $12 million for Waterloo. How much are they saving per year? Was it a one lump sum and then there's a cost to the community? We need those numbers, or the new council is going to need those numbers. Legislation, you're telling us we have to do this. How many staff are required to bring us to that point that the legislation is suggesting that we have to do? Is this a wish list, a want list? You're suggesting, the director, that it's a need list. Do we need 7? To refer this to the budget process, a wholesome report is critical. Sometimes at budget time, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be here, and some of councillors here aren't going to be here for sure, but when we come to budget time, sometimes the new council looks at this and said, oh, the previous council dealt with this. Well, I don't want this report to anyone to think that we've really dealt with this, because we've looked at it, we haven't thoroughly dealt with this. So I'm even concerned by just referring it to budget time, referring a new presentation prior to budget time is critical, and not have it dropped on the desks of the new councilors. Oh, here's the capital budget. We're looking at it for the first time in the end of December, early January. It's got to be done by the end of January. Folks, you got to bite the bullet and take it. I'm concerned with whoever's going to be sitting here accepting this, assuming that this council approved it. So I'm uncomfortable with referring it. Approval, yes. Refer to a further report, fine. I don't want to see it tied into the budget process yet. So I'm not going to vote part one.
Thank you, Councillor. Commissioner?
I would just like, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just want to address a couple of comments. As Rup has indicated, other single tiers, other regions are well into this. And the reason why the Asset Management Office has become so critical is that this is going to be transformative for the organization. To touch on a number of your comments, yes, we do asset management planning. We do asset management here all the time. We do that every time we bring a capital budget forward. You've talked about the investment gap or the capital asset gap, millions of dollars, multi-millions of dollars of what we don't have funding for to do capital works. This report is giving you an expert's opinion on establishing the governance model that's going to transform the organization to be able to do the things that we are required to do. Many of you talk about going to another level of government, the feds, the province. These requirements of having an asset management office and functioning and being able to prove that you're doing the right, you're investing in the right capital assets is a requirement, and it's going to continue to be a requirement of funding initiatives from the province and the feds. It's really important. What we're asking for, the report indicates, is that the governance report be received and that it be referred to the 2019 budget. That's what we're asking for. So we'll come, I appreciate all the comments and all the concerns and the questions. We're listening. We're going to bring these back so we can have a more fulsome discussion when we get the budget. This is not something that can be deferred or pushed down to a future year. The legislation, the requirements of the province ask us to have a report in next year. So just so everybody's aware, and also speaking to any future councillors that might be aware that they want to bump this down to two or 3 years into the term. This is something that's in front of you. This is an expert's opinion on what we should do on a governance model, and it's going to be transformative for the organization. We have a lot of great staff. I alluded to it when we were talking about the budget presentation. We have a lot of staff, a lot of great technical people. They're not technically doing what is asset management planning as defined by what asset management professionalism is, but we're going to get there. This governance model will get us there. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councillor Timms.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think many of the questions and concerns have been asked. Just want to make sure that when this report comes back, there's a clear definition of who owns what buildings and who has authority over the buildings. Because I do recall the police board and this council having a great, even an OMB, I think, discussion about no doubt who owns the building, but who has authority about what goes in it or how it's managed and all those things. It was very clear that was contentious with the police board. It's still, I think, interesting question with regard to Niagara Regional Housing. Who has authority, even though that we know the council owns it? Who has authority? So those things need to be, I think, clear when you address this. And the second thing is, if we're going to add these offices, are either of those two housing or police board able to reduce their staff complement because we are doing this? So I think that all needs to be in the report that comes to us. And I would ask you, the presenter, are you aware of any of those kind of issues with the example you had where you saved a bunch of money? Was there an issue or a question about who owns and manages the police services buildings?
If I may, Councillor, I'm going to ask Director Chamberlain to have first crack at it, and certainly the presenter can add if he wishes.
Through the chair. So with respect to the recommendations that GHDS provided, it's around the structure of making sure that you have the people in place who define these things, who can identify who owns the building, where the responsibility for the operation, maintenance, and capital of those facilities should lie. So that would be the outcomes of a good asset management process, is we would have all that information. We would have that clarity, and with all the leadership and the structure in the asset management office, we would be able to bring back those pieces of information and have the depth to respond to that. So that would be the secondary part of the outcomes of the asset management governance, to be able to make sure that we had clarity in terms of where those buildings are and where those budgets should go. So I think that that's somewhat outside the scope of what we've asked GHD to do. We've asked them to, in light of knowing that we have all these assets, because at the end of the day, we know that they're regional responsibility, whether they're budgeted as a police building or a regional asset. It's one taxpayer, we still have the responsibility, and it's housing and police assets are all still required to be included in this process. And we did work with the ABCs in our developing our asset management plan. So the same process that we would like to develop for the departments would be applicable to the ABCs, and that leadership in the asset management office would extend entirely to both departments and ABCs.
Maybe through the chair, I could just add to what Alan said. I think Councillor Timms, that's exactly why you should be doing asset management. The reason you need an asset management office so that the region can answer these 5 questions at any time. What do you own? What's the condition of the asset? What's the level of service you expect? The risk profile and the life cycle strategies? And what's the investment strategy to keep the asset at a level of integrity to deliver the service? That's why people have gone down the road of an corporate asset management office, to establish consistency in processes and a framework that would allow everybody at the region level down to regional housing, the police, whichever group, to answer these questions in a consistent and accurate, transparent manner. That's why you're doing asset management.
Okay, so that's very encouraging, and I appreciate the answer, and hopefully this will be provide a real return on investment for the region. Your example you offered, it looks to me like you're saying that we're going to spend $1 million a year on 7 staff, and we're going to save $12 million a year on efficiencies. Or did I overstate the $12 million example?
Well, to use through the chair, that's one example where within the first year they saw that. There are many other examples where on the J curve, you spend 1, 2, 3 million and the savings are significant. The return on investment in asset management is unbelievable compared to other projects that you do.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Volpatti.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for your discussion on this. I think it's very illuminating. Obviously, we have to go there in some way or other. I would like to see for the new council some comparators. A corporation of our size with our assets, I think about 6 billion, I heard that figure, 7 billion, I heard this morning. What should we be spending on our asset management office to have something that is best practice and that will meet the obligations of the new legislation? I mean, I understand you have a lot of experience, you've done a lot of municipalities, and just some comparators as to what we should be spending, I think would be very helpful, and I'm assuming that would be included in your report to the new council.
Through you to the chair, through the chair to you, sorry.
Yes.
Part of the second task we do in the organizational impacts, we included a peer review of municipalities like you saw. So we talked to Toronto Water, Region of Waterloo, City of Calgary, City of Barrie, Region of Peel. So we've already had that discussion. They all have an asset management office. They've all many years ago implemented this and more. And they not only have done that, they've moved their maturity from awareness and establishment in most cases to beyond competence.
Right, right.
So that's been captured in part of the peer review we've done.
Right, and we have not, and we have to.
Exactly.
And we have to get there. But some of these comparators would be really helpful in your report, which will be to the new council.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and yeah, thank you for the report. I think we all take asset management very seriously, and it's for some of us. I was a mayor for 11 years, and I can tell you that from day one, we were under the gun to advance our abilities in the corporation to manage our assets appropriately. I'm thinking back right now to, I believe there was a report called Watertight that was produced by the province after the Walkerton incident, and it put a lot of pressure on municipalities to not only do asset management, but to comply to a kind of a form or there's a name for it. I can't remember what the word is right now. But at any rate, we were obligated to do that. A small town like ours, we did that through training. And the province at that time offered opportunities for professional development. And they were also, I remember going and delegating the provincial government to ensure that grants were made available to cover some of the costs, both for training and if you had to hire new staff resources. So I'm a little concerned, and I don't want to repeat all of the concerns that have been legitimately raised. I think today to approve 7 FTEs, I believe is just a mistake and not called for. I don't think we're quite there yet, and I do believe that I don't think we delegated the new provincial government on this matter. We probably should have, and I think if we'd been aware that we were going to be confronted with an ask for 7 new FTEs essentially to fill out the forms that the province expects if you're going to get any grants, that's an issue that could have been, I think, brought to the new government, and the new government certainly, I think, prides themselves in trying to reduce red tape and regulation. So I think there could be perhaps at least some time provided to allow municipalities to comply with this new reporting mechanism. So at any rate, I do want to ask a question about, because I was quite concerned to hear that there's an international scale on asset management governance from 0 to 5. And I'm just wondering, when was our assessment done? Because, and I don't want to go into any details that I shouldn't go into, what we all know as councillors and staff here is that we were running on quite a depleted set of talent in our public works area for a considerable length of time. The details don't matter, but the facts remain. And if we were assessed for our talent at that time, it might have kind of skewed our score downward, because I never believed that the Niagara region, of all the things that we might want to criticize, I never believed that we actually were poor in the area of asset management. I thought we'd actually done a lot of work, and there was a lot of forward thinking in terms of trying to address the infrastructure gap. So I'm a little surprised to find that at the last minute we're desperate to develop basically a reporting department, which is what this amounts to from my point of view. And if ever the term, you don't fatten the pig by weighing it, that's the appropriate term to describe the forcing, and I'm not blaming certainly the consultant you've been asked to do and report as you see and through your professional eyes, but I actually believe that this is an exercise that the new government probably would want to take a look at and want to make sure that they're not just creating, this is a bureaucratic step. I don't see other than that it's just a new bureaucratic step. So anyway, I can't support this today in the way it's being presented, and I certainly, I'm not going to be here to vote on the next budget, but being handed a report that says must be 7 new FTEs, and without any really supporting documentation to show that in fact we don't have the capacity in-house. And I know the CAO has said that that they would source talent in-house, but the ask is for 7 FTEs, and that's what you're being asked to approve today.
Great, thank you, Councillor. I just want to clarify again, it's committees and councils not being asked to approve the 7 FTEs, it's just to refer it as part of the 2019 budget process. CEO?
Through you, Chair, to committee, and respectfully, I hear your comments, Councillor Hodgson. So the Asset Management Office, yes, there is an element that it reports in order to gain access to grants and incentives, and also a reporting mechanism. But the primary responsibility is to manage the $7.4 billion in assets that we have across the region. That's the primary focus. And then to prioritize that and then fit it into our budget envelope. So that's the primary objective. If I may, respectfully, this isn't last minute. This has been in development. It's been phased in. We've budgeted for it. This is the conclusion step to take the next step. So we finished the phase, and we're not telling you, this is a recommendation that we know we have to fit it in the budget guidance of 1.5%. So we know the challenges ahead of us, but I would submit this is a recommendation, not a set ask right now. It's basically for our overall objective of how to manage $7.4 billion in assets, that it's not freelancing amongst the divisions and departments. It's a centralized report structure. If I can, I know, and I used this commentary before, having an asset management plan, it's not sexy. It's not a big building, right? It's nothing new. It's a new function, and I would equivalent to it just like EFMS. So previously, the administration, they recommended to you a $12.4 million investment into this organization in order to get the return on investment that you're actually seeing today. So this is what this is. This is a step forward, yes, to meet legislative requirements, yes, to meet reporting requirements, but it's to manage our assets so that down the road we have a skilled set of staff who are responsible for $7.4 billion in assets and how to maintain them as we bring new assets on board. So that's what this is. It's a recommendation, but I assure you, by referring it to budget, puts the challenge on staff on how to fit it within the budget envelope. Thanks.
If I could, through the chair to Councillor Hodgson. It's quite interesting that you spent $12 million on a financial system to track your budgets and track your invoices that you spend, whatever. And this ask is $750,000 to ensure the work processes, the business processes, to do the right things on the assets. So when you use your financial system to track the invoices, you're doing the right things here. And here's it. This is just, that's a key thing to keep in mind as you deliberate and make your decision moving forward. And it's not about just filling out forms to meet the provincial guidelines. This is establishing consistency in the way you make decisions, how you capture knowledge and assets for continuity of your business as people move on, and ensuring that everybody follows the same process so that you could be confident that you have reliable information when it comes up to you to make capital decisions. That's simply what we're looking at here.
Commissioner?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just want to real quickly say, I think it was misunderstood what I said about provincial government's funding and federal government's funding. This is already going on. If you look at this asset management office will give better information to make decisions between the investments or what you apply for. And so it's not necessarily tied in. There's no reporting that's tied into. It's to be able to prove that you're making the best decisions on your capital reinvestment. It was, if you notice with the CWWF funding, the PTIF funding, these requirements are starting to be in the reporting that we get back to them, but to identify that you have an asset management plan you're identifying the best projects to move forward with. That's transformational. That's going to happen in the future. It's not about bookkeeping and reporting.
Thank you, Councillor Augustine.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. We spent a lot of time on this, but my question would be, when this comes back, the relationship to the asset management plan that was adopted by council in 2014, and also the many, many reorgs that have occurred. So there's been some reorgs that have been done with, I forget what they've all been called, institutional this and you know, different, I forget what all the areas have been called. But also with the management, financial management system, as our presenter talked about, there were supposed to be some roles in that as well, and some changes in that. So I think for council's perspective, it needs to be holistic and not just these are the 7, but how does it fit in with all of the other things that we've done in the past with the management plan under financing, with the asset management plan that was approved in 2014 referenced in the report. Thanks.
That's fine. Councillor Quirk.
Thank you. Councillor Augustine twigged something to me, and I'm sorry if I missed this, but with respect to the master plans that we have done with respect to transportation, wastewater, water, we're now doing the waste management master plan and the comprehensive review. All of that information will also be fed through this office. This will be sort of like the clearinghouse for a lot of that work. And am I right in making that assumption that these would also be part and parcel of this process, not just our current assets, but our future planning as well?
Well, to you through the chair, to answer that, as I said, the asset management framework is based on the Deming Cycle Plan, Do, Check, Act. Under planning, there are 3 pillars of planning you got to excel at. You got to excel at growth or master planning that you talked about, renewal replacement planning based on comprehensive risk management, and be clear how you intend to operate and maintain your assets to extend life, performance, reliability. The growth master planning addresses exactly what you say. And the asset management office ensures there is consistency and high quality in how you do the planning so that you could deliver on the right things.
And I appreciate that. I think when we look at the amount of money we spent with consultants to do those master plans, that it would be irresponsible to not put the resources in place to make sure that we implement them and manage the assets accordingly. So I have no problem with asking staff to try to fit this in within its current guidance that we've set. And if we can't make it, we as council or new council make decisions on what their priorities are. But for me, this is a no-brainer.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Quirk. Seeing no other speakers, I'll call the question again to refer this matter to the 2019 budget process. Councillor Easton, do you want to speak to this?
Speakers list. I can't remember who the mover and seconder is for this motion.
Sorry, go ahead, you can say it.
I was the second.
It was moved by Councillor Burrows and seconded by you, Councillor Easton.
All right. I wanted to make is it appropriate for me to make a revision, an amendment, a friendly amendment? As the seconder, can I do that?
Let's hear it first, and then.
All right. I was just going to ask, Mr. Chairman, that it might be more of a general statement. If we remove the 7 full-time equivalents, but put into the motion, take that out and put in, including all supporting justification for resources required. Would that be considered a friendly amendment? It may be more palatable.
So let's do it as an, I see the mover of the motion is actually stepping out, so we'll need a new mover as well. Yeah, we're hearing it's going to be part of the business case anyway. So although we do need a new mover now anyway, Councillor Timms, are you fine to move it? Thank you. Are you accepting it as friendly?
Yes, I would accept it as friendly.
Okay, thank you.
And you are the second, friendly, Mayor Easton.
Make sure we get that captured appropriately. Can you repeat it one more time, Councillor Easton, so we can
remove, including the number, including the 7 full-time equivalents, and just insert and be referred to for consideration as part of the 2019 budget process, including all supporting justification for resources required. which is what they're going to do anyway, but it removes that concern about the number.
Okay, thanks. So we'll get that on the screen. A recorded vote was called. So I'll look to the clerk once it's on the screen and they're ready to call the vote.
It's okay.
Vote is open.
Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Mr. Luchman, thanks so much for your work on this file as well.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much, and I think it's the right decision. Good luck.
Thank you very much. We do have, we got some time to go to 6.2. That's GM 17-2018 Business Licensing Transition. I'll look for a mover and seconder for the report. Moved by Councilor Patty, seconded by Councilor Quirk. Thank you. I know we have a presentation as well. However, I'll ask Jeanette Gomez to come to the podium if she's here. Not to deliver the presentation only because of timing purposes. However, we'll accept questions to the presentation and the report. We'll open the speakers list right away. Councilor Nunziata.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And I'm not sure how important this is with respect to the feedback that you've received from the host municipalities. Now, I read with interest the report, and it says, given the divide in jurisdictional levels, 2 bylaws have been presented for approval, one for adult entertainment licenses for the lower, for the LAM tier, and one for the upper tier license of transportation network companies, taxis, secondhand goods stores, auto wreckers, salvage yards, and vehicles for hire, trucks, and what have you. I guess my question is, you knocked off one item, which is the adult entertainment licenses, and you had that engagement with lower tier municipalities. What's the next thing that you're going to tackle? Because I also read that once the unit has been operating for a period of time, staff will engage in a process improvement business review of the unit's operating procedures and may make changes to the bylaw from time to time to support recommended improvements. Am I to assume that those recommended improvements coming forward will deal with auto wreckers, will deal with taxi licensing, will deal with those other issues? Because that's what I'm hearing in my municipality. And quite frankly, I'm a little surprised that we went through the process for the adult entertainment licensing, and I don't know the rationale behind that. But coming from my municipality, I would think that, and coming from this council, knowing that transportation is front and center on this council's agenda, that why we would not triage and why we would not prioritize the taxi and the ride-sharing industry licensing and put that in front of this council first and foremost. So I guess there's a whole bunch of questions there, and I apologize, but just wanted to get your feedback on that.
Yep, go ahead.
So it's not a matter of prioritization, they're equally prioritized. It was just the jurisdictional divide that required us to go to the local area municipalities in order to gain the delegation of authority, in order to bring the business unit over as a whole. The reason we chose to split them out as far as the bylaw goes is that some local area municipalities, namely Thorold, Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, already have adult entertainment bylaws. and some don't. So Welland, for example, is one that you'll notice is referenced in the bylaw before you today. Niagara on the Lake and Fort Erie also being included. So in the event that we look at the bylaws down the road, we wanted to separate it out because there may be an appetite across the local area municipalities to come to some sort of consensus and consistency across the board with how that works, whether it's all a bylaw at the regional level or if it's bylaws at the local area municipality. So it just offered us that opportunity. To reference the transportation, it's on the table just as much as anything else. So it will be considered a unit, and all of the business licensing in the unit will be assessed as a unit. So we would, at the time, if we were looking to make changes to the processes and the related bylaws, we would engage the public and the stakeholders in that process equally for all business licenses, not just focusing on one.
Okay, so I appreciate all those comments. So you say I'm moving forward. Have you been given that mandate to look at transportation, taxi licensing?
Not yet.
Not yet.
So right now the region, that's what the bylaws are for today, is to bring that over and gain approval from this council to get that ball rolling. We wanted to make sure we had a point of approval with council before we moved ahead with onboarding the unit, for example, for NRPS to deal with labor relations and other things on their side. So it sort of puts that stamp of approval on it to allow us to formalize that transition, which is exactly what would happen next. Once we formalize the transition, we can move forward with those project steps that would actually prepare us and create structure around the unit here at Niagara Region.
Okay, so my last question through you, Mr. Chair, is this a process that you're going to tackle concurrently, or are you going to lift, individual elements out of that business unit licensing? So for example, are you going to tackle secondhand goods stores, auto wreckers, salvage yards, taxiing all at once? Or do I have to bring forward a recommendation that we do triage and we do prioritize? And the first thing you look at is the taxi licensing, because I'll let you know right now, in my municipality, it's broken. 13 licenses, all owned by the same company, and good luck getting a taxi when you need one.
Mm-hmm. So the plan is to transition the unit as is, which we've been reporting to date, but once we get a hold of it, we would do a fulsome current state analysis. So that would be looking at all the business licenses equally over time. The next step to that review would be a future state analysis. So based on the stakeholder feedback, the different needs of the municipalities, the needs of the region, the strategic direction of the unit, what are our priorities at that time? So when you develop your future state, that's when you prioritize what you handle first, second, third, and fourth, and what you allocate your resources to. So at this time, I couldn't be specific about that, but certainly it would depend on that engagement and the feedback. Obviously, your feedback now would be considered as to what is priority for that type of business at Niagara Region.
Okay, so, and my last comment then is the priority is the voices and the concern that I'm hearing from my community. So I'm passing that on and putting staff on notice that that has to be addressed. Right now, the model as is broken. And maybe it works in other larger municipalities, but when you're dealing with Fort Erie, when you're dealing with some of the outlier municipalities, geographically vast, with modest and affordable transit systems, there's gaps. Mm-hmm. And those gaps need to be filled, hopefully by ride servicing industry and by taxing. And if those are not available, then unfortunately, the only impact are to the residents and to the workers and to those people that have to get somewhere at a certain time safely. And that's just not happening, and it hasn't happened in a very, very long time, and I want to see that prioritized. So you're hearing this message loud and clear from the people in Fort Erie. That needs to be fixed. With respect to the other issues with the adult licensing, I was at the meeting that you attended. Thank you very much for presenting to council. Your presentation was received very, very well. I have corresponded with our colleagues at Niagara Regional Police. They've been very helpful in helping me understand the process moving forward. So I have no problem with the report as is, but moving forward, like I said, I need something coming forward with respect to the taxi licensing. It's broken, and we got to fix it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Height.
Yes, echo the words of Councillor Annunziata regarding the transportation issue, but to bring up a point that was brought up at Public Health, the concern of cannabis locations, and there was discussion that possibly that kind of licensing might be established in Niagara. I'm not stating that I'm in favor of opposed, but that could be ending up at your desk in the next number of months as well. And if we're talking prioritizing things, the stores, I think, are planned for April 2019. So if there's a priority, and that's a decision of council or the cities, we've got to act on that very quickly.
Thank you, Councillor Augustine.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. The bylaw wasn't up a couple of days ago, so I'm reading the adult entertainment one. How's this going to work? Because I understand right now, and it's in the bylaw here, that somebody applying for these licenses, these permits, I guess, have to get a police check, and they have to get a report from the fire chief of their municipality and a planning department and a clerk. So how's this working? They're all going to have to go to the city of Niagara Falls, the town of Fort Erie, etc., get all that stuff, or the police headquarters in Niagara Falls, and then they're going to have to come over here and get their license. Is that how that works?
So through the chair, yes, there's two types of licenses for adult entertainment. One is for the club owner, so they would require all of those different pieces. The dancer themselves, I believe it's just a police check and identification that they have to present with. We do recognize that they will have to attend Niagara Regional Police to get their checks. There is the option of an online application as well to prevent the need to go into the building. And we have in our projection for budget and revenue streams back that cost out so that we're not, the client or the applicant is not incurring additional cost based on the fact that now the region is separating those operations from NRPS.
Okay, thanks. So there's really three. There's the owner, there's the operator, and then there's the performer. Is that correct? Correct. To the budget, it's kind of nebulous in my read of it, Mr. Chair, and I mean no offense, but any financial resources required for the project will be absorbed in the 2018 approved budget or requested through a regular 2019 budget planning and approval process. I don't know what the budget amount is. Like, what are we talking about here? And is it bigger than $50,000?
Through the chair.
Ms. Gomez?
So at this point, we don't have solid numbers just yet for the transition costs because we haven't got the stamp of approval. So we haven't wanted to move forward with allocating those yet, although we have put a number of options on the table and costs associated with those. So estimated, we do, through consultation with finance, have the availability in the 2018 for any transition costs in 2018. The operating costs for the unit, so hiring the FTEs and implementing the service, would hit the 2019 budget, and that would go through the regular budget review process and approval process. So I don't know if Helen wants to add to that.
Thanks. I didn't hear any dollars. I didn't hear any figures. So it sounds like staff have the information. Can I ask, Mr. Chair,
Yep.
why we're not getting that information?
Director Chamberlain?
Through the chair, I believe that Ms. Goman's actually had some of the previous reports. There may have been some order of magnitude, but essentially this is a cost recovery. There's a fee for service. So the model will be built such that the level of resources required will be built into the fees associated with delivering that service. So as it stands right now, it's completely it's a net zero sum game.
I'm sorry, but I just heard our presenter, Mr. Chair, say that there's going to be a change there and that's not included, some of those costs.
Through the chair, I believe what was indicated is that some of the startup, until we get up to speed and we're actually earning the user fee, there may be some startup costs there with some costs associated that could be absorbed in the 2018 existing budget, but the 2019 would be built on a full cost recovery basis. We would establish the number of resources based on the level of revenue that we can expect and vice versa.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to see those costs. You know, that's one of the things. financial considerations, even if it's a net zero or whatever, I want to see the budget. So I don't know where
Certainly.
those are. Um,
So through the chair, we could provide those estimates at this time, like to the counselor, if you'd like.
Yeah, I think to all of committee.
CAO?
Through Chair to Councilor Augustine, so thank you. We do have that information. There's various models. We could easily send it to all committee members, absolutely.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think that's important. So somebody, even answering some of these questions, like I asked the question, and I was over there in Councilor Rigby's seat, because this was during June. I said, why are we doing this? We've heard one rationale today from Councilor Nunziata, because on the taxi side, I'm still not entirely clear why we're doing it on the adult entertainment side, again, because of these challenges. Now it sounds like we can mitigate some of those things with online uses, et cetera. But I don't understand the rationale. So if that can be presented to us, the presentation, as I read it, Mr. Chair, which we didn't have time to see, is really about what happened, but I still don't understand the why. So I'll be looking for that. Maybe something can be given to us in a memo for council. But what's the rationale for us doing this and changing the current model? I heard that some of it was to save money somehow on the police side, but it also seems like some of the work still has to be done by the police. So I want to understand it, and that's why I'm looking for the budget estimates to understand how this thing's going to work, and maybe that'll answer the question of why are we proposing this change. Thanks.
Thanks. I think the idea of a memo, maybe as a companion with the bylaws when they're brought forward, is a good one. Just on a really high level, it is a regional responsibility, not a police services board responsibility. And I think the adult entertainment licensing is kind of keeping the one-stop shop model that if local municipalities decide, and they have, to retain it as that one-stop shop model, and that's why that component is there. But I'm not the expert by any means, and maybe through a memo we can describe a little more detail, if that's fine.
Certainly.
Thank you. Councillor Timms. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just reading through the attached bylaws, so I'm clear on what is being moved to the region. And there's pertinent reports from 2017, CAO 11, 2018, and a correspondence item from 2018 referred to in the report. So the memo probably is going to be a kind of a summary of those three reports that help lay out the rationale that got us to this point. So I'm pleased to, and we'll be supporting the motions that are in front of us. It seems like, it's going to be intended to be a cost recovery operation. And secondly, it moves from police operations to regional operations. So I think that it's in effect a net zero, but in terms of cost or taxes, but it's expected to be an operationally more efficient and effective and administered here as opposed to the police department. So I think the rationale will be there. The memo would be appreciated, and I'll support this motion on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no other speakers, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you. Just because we do, thank you so much for your time and your work on this file, Ms. Coens. We do have to end this meeting by 1 p.m. as there's been a public meeting declared at 1 p.m. for part of the planning. So I would ask perhaps committee refer CSD 48-2018 to the next Corporate Services Committee, if that's fine. Moved by Councillor Quirk, seconded by Councillor Height. All those in favor of referring that item? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you. So we do have 2 closed session items. However, we only need to go in camera if committee members have questions with either one of those 2. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to ask for the closed session. Are there any questions to go in camera? Councillor Augustine? Okay. So before we do that, we do have a consent item, 2018 Q2 financial update. We can move it now, or if committee would like to refer that one as well, that's fine too. We have less than 20 minutes. Councillor Quirk. Okay, move to receive. Is there a second to receive? Councillor Easton, thank you. All in favor of receiving CSD 53? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you. So closed session item, Councillor Augustine, is it on both items or one or the other to go in camera for?
Yeah, it's actually both short questions, but both, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so if you move a question to go in
Okay,
closed session.
I'll move that, but there's some items of other business. I sent one around, for instance, about the expenses, so those have to be dealt with at some point. So maybe next meeting, if we can have extra, you can plan extra time for other business, that would be helpful, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, there should be, that report should be coming at the next meeting anyway on the agenda.
Okay.
But with respect to the in-camera items, if you're moving that to go in camera, that's fine. Is there a seconder? Councillor Quirk. All in favor of going in camera for the items listed? Opposed, if any? Thank you. So we do have a new protocol. We will have to get up and move to committee room 4, I understand. I'll look to the clerk to advise committee the protocol. Councillor D'Angela.
Mr. Chair, you skipped other business and you went straight to closed session.
That's right.
Are we going to deal with other business coming out of closed session?
If we have time. We have to end this meeting by 1 p.m.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just on a point of order then, if we don't deal with those items in other business, can we bring those directly to council?
Go ahead. Okay, go ahead, CEO.
Through you, Chair, to Councillor D'Angela, you have to bring it, new business on to the next committee.
Okay, we already have an approved motion to go in camera. We have limited time. Let's get going. Thank you.
So just to update, as per council's direction, staff have readied committee room 4 to be used as the ante room for closed session. So as we are doing that, we'll just ask councillors to move into committee room 4 where there is no assigned seating, but we'll move in there with any staff that need to attend right now, heading through over here.
Okay, thanks. I'd ask that Corporate Services Committee members please take your seat and sign in. Okay, Corporate Services Committee members, we have reconvened in open session. Look for a mover and seconder for the item on the screen, and that is to receive the confidential information discussed. Moved by Councillor Height, seconded by Councillor Timms. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.
One more.
Oh, the two separate ones? Thank you for catching that. Mover and seconder, Councillor Patty, seconded by Councillor Height. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Good to adjourn? All right. This meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for your patience.